Experts gave up on the billionaire's son until a maid revealed the truth no doctor could. Before we begin, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching from right now. Type your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story reaches. And when we get to the end, I dare you to rate it from 0 to 10 because this one might just break your heart. Now, lean back and let the story unfold. Ronan was only 10 years old, and today he promised himself he wouldn't cry. The test paper in front of him looked like a battlefield, letters twisted, broken, turning on him. Every B slipped into a D, as if the alphabet itself was running away from him. And then came the sharp laughter. He can't even spell the word cat. Outside, a sleek black Tesla waited in silence. Inside, his father, a billionaire CEO, checked his watch as if he were closing $1 million deal, not waiting for the son who kept bringing home one failing grade after another. Then Ronan blinked. For the briefest moment, the letters stopped dancing. A flicker of hope sparked in his chest, yet it hurt more than the shame itself. Because he knew what would come when that car door opened. Try harder. Be better. Don't disappoint me. No one. Not the tutors. Not the specialists. Not even his own father saw what was really happening. No one realized that a secret was about to step into Ronan's life. Dressed in a simple white uniform. Carrying the one key that would rewrite his destiny. In the grand Beverly Hills mansion, crystal chandeliers spilled light across a dining table so long it turned the space between father and son into an invisible wall. Oliver Lawson, 38 years old, a billionaire CEO whose single nod could rattle markets, sat with perfect posture in a flawless black suit. Across from him, little Ronan hunched over a bowl of soup, gone cold, his small shoulders folding inward as if he could vanish into the marble walls around him. You lost focus again. How many times must I say it? There's no room for weakness in the Lawson family. Oliver's voice echoed through the cold marble hall. Ronan's heart tightened, and he swallowed back tears. In this house of glittering wealth, everything shone except one thing: understanding. And dear listener, I want you to pause here and put yourself in Ronan's place. Have you ever sat across from someone you loved most in the world, yet felt completely invisible to them? If you have, drop a comment and share your heart, because tonight's story will take us deep into that loneliness and toward the very moment it begins to heal. Part 1. The F's Keep Coming. Spelling class began with the creak of a felt-tip marker against the board, the chalk dust smell, mixing with cool air, humming along the ceiling vents. Autumn light filtered through the tall windows, laying golden rectangles across the polished wood floor. Ronan sat at the very back, shoulders folded in as if he could make himself smaller than the chair. In front of him, a blank sheet waited for obedient letters, and then betrayed him. Rewrite these 10 words. Ms. Henderson smiled, her voice even, and bright as a bell. Begin. Ronan's pencil trembled. Rabbit. He sounded it out in his head, slow and careful, like swallowing grains of sand. The stroke slipped. Rabbit. He erased. Tried again. Rabbit. The B sneaked into a D the moment he looked away. Elephant came to his tongue, but fell onto the page as elephant. Each letter was a tiny fish. Touch it, and it wriggled free. He's messing up again, Tyler whispered, loud enough for half the class. His dad could buy the whole school, but he still can't spell cat. Jackson snorted, tapping his pencil on the desk. Maybe he should go back to kindergarten. Ronan swallowed hard. I studied. I traced every stroke the way Ms. Maria taught me. Slow is smart. The words scribbled on an old sticky note were still tucked in his pencil case. He slid a finger along its edge like a small prayer. Ms. Henderson walked the aisle heels, keeping time. 1 minute left. Ronan's chest cinched tight. White space yawned across the page. He pressed each letter down, as if rowing against a current. In the middle of his panic, his eyes drifted to the window. The black Tesla waited in the courtyard below. His father, Oliver Lawson, dark suit, a glinting watch at his wrist, sat upright, eyes fixed on his phone. In that moment, all sound in the classroom receded until only his heartbeat remained. Don't cry. Don't cry. And strangely, the letters on the page stopped dancing for exactly one breath. Hope flickered warm enough to sting. Time. Papers were passed forward. When Ronan's reached the teacher's hands, Tyler let out a low whistle. Ronan lowered his head and saw graphite dust smeared over his fingertips. He wished he could blur out the entire morning the way an eraser smudged a line. By the end of class, papers came back. A bright red F sat in the most visible corner, the color stabbing through thin paper like a verdict. Ms. Henderson rested a gentle hand on the desk's edge. Her voice stayed kind, but carried the chill of polished stone. Ronan, you need better focus. Effort isn't enough. You have to do it the right way. I'll schedule a meeting with your father. Snickers cracked from the front row. Ronan folded the paper and slipped it into his backpack as if hiding a wound that still bled. Suddenly, he could smell Miss Maria's soap, see her blue ink handwriting slanting softly. Slow is smart. He breathed in varnished wood, and chalk dust jostled together, his eyes burning. Somewhere in the city, his father was likely closing a deal bigger than this shame would ever be. The bell rang. Kids spilled into the hallway, like a rush of water sneakers squealing on the floor. Ronan stood slowly, shoulders still folded, hand clamped tight around his backpack strap. He glanced at the window. The Tesla waited calm as a locked safe. He whispered, not sure to himself or the vacant space between him and the man in the car, I won't cry. Then he walked out carrying a red F, an old sticky note, and a loneliness large enough to swallow lunch whole. At the end of the corridor, the glass door slid open like the mouth of a cold tunnel. Outside, autumn wind moved through the palms. Inside, a 10-year-old boy learned to stand upright under laughter so that tonight, at an endless dining table, he could try again to decode the hardest 2 words he knew being understood. At midday, Westfield Academy's courtyard was a bright stage where every child tried to play their part perfectly. Laughter shouts, the thud of a basketball drummed the air. In the middle of it, Ronan walked quietly, head down the red F, pressing like a weight in his backpack. At the gate, a glossy black Tesla Model X idled. A few students whispered, "Whose car is that?" "Oh, that's Ronan's. His dad's a billionaire." "Yeah, but he's dumb. Always gets Fs." The last line, followed by a little burst of giggles, felt like a small knife in Ronan's back. He stopped squeezing the strap until his palm went damp. He wanted to shout, "I'm not stupid. I'm just different." But his throat locked, and all he could hear was his heartbeat rushing. Oliver Lawson sat in the back seat, eyes glued to the iPad. A few charts, a short thread from key partners. To Oliver, the world was a chain of numbers and deals to win. He checked his watch, 12:30, right on time. He looked up just as Ronan opened the door, small and swallowed by the wide leather seat. "Why so late?" Oliver asked, voice level, not angry, just heavy. Ronan slid the test from his bag and placed it on his lap. One glance. The red F seized Oliver's attention. He drew a long breath, leaned back, closed his eyes like he was clamping down on something. "Ronan, you have to focus. At home, I've hired 3 tutors, added extra programs, and still this. Do you understand? In this world, weakness isn't forgiven." The words hung in the quiet car. Ronan bit his lip and didn't look up. Out there, his classmates thought he was the billionaire's kid. In here, in the hush of the Tesla, he was just a 10-year-old pressed against a wall of expectations too big to climb. In that moment, Ronan wished his mother were still alive, the only person who had smiled softly and said, "Letters may dance, but you can learn to dance with them." The memory broke over him. His eyes blurred. He wiped them quickly with the back of his hand, hiding from his father's sharp gaze. Oliver opened his eyes and studied his son. For a heartbeat, something like sorrow crossed his face, an echo of the look his wife wore before she died, pleading to be understood. He swallowed it down and turned away. "Reasons are excuses. I'll hire another tutor tomorrow. If I have to, I'll send you to Brookfield. They'll teach you discipline." The air went still. Ronan stared at his steak slice breath from earlier now, just a scent of garlic and butter stuck in memory. His heart tightened into something small enough to disappear beneath that endless table. The Tesla rolled away from the curb, its shadow dragging like a strip of black ink. Ronan looked through the window at his classmates still laughing in the golden light. In their world, a misspelled word was just a joke. In his, the son of a billionaire CEO, every mistake was a cut across pride, a document proving he didn't deserve the name Lawson. He whispered only for himself, "I tried. No one sees it." By evening, the Lawson mansion glowed like a glass fortress. Crystal chandeliers poured warm light onto marble floors, but none of it reached the cold in the house. The dining room was so long that the clink of fork against plate sounded like it was echoing from far away. Ronan sat at one end, a pre-sliced steak cooling on his plate. Garlic butter perfume filled the air, but he couldn't swallow. He fixed his eyes on the wood grain, avoiding his father's gaze. Oliver sat opposite, posture pristine, a Patek Philippe flashing at his wrist. He ate while glancing at the file beside him. "Ms. Henderson emailed me." Oliver set down his knife and fork. His voice was steady, but it carried weight. "She says you lost focus again, still making basic mistakes. Are you planning to let the whole school think you're a fool?" While you carry the Lawson name, Ronan clenched his spoon. Sweat slicked his palm. He wanted to say, "I tried. I studied all night." But the letters keep changing. The words piled like stones in his throat. Oliver went on. "I worked day and night to protect this family's name. All I need from you is effort and focus. Do you think I'll tolerate F's forever?" The sentence twisted like a knife into a raw wound. In a flash, he saw the polished Tesla, the snickering faces, the teacher's thin smile. And here, in this glittering room, there still wasn't a place to breathe. He lifted his head, eyes shining. "I'm trying, Dad. But the letters keep turning into other things. I don't know why." Oliver paused. For a second, he saw his son's eyes so desperate, just like his wife's once were begging to be seen. He masked the feeling and looked away. "Reasons are excuses. Tomorrow I'll call another tutor. If necessary, I'll enroll you at Brookfield. They'll teach you discipline." The air froze. Ronan stared down. The steak's rich smell turned metallic and strange. His heart pinched smaller, small enough to vanish under the endless table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Los Angeles sparkled extravagant and far. Inside, a 10-year-old boy, curled into a leather chair, swallowed by emptiness. Night settled. The Lawson estate was so quiet you could hear wind brush the palms outside. Ronan's room on the third floor was spacious and perfectly appointed, a king-size bed, a walnut desk, shelves lined with expensive children's books he'd never finished. A lamplight poured a soft gold circle across his notebook. In front of him lay the extra spelling sheet his father had assigned. Black letters bled into one another, tilting like waves. He traced each sound, whispering B, A, T, but when the pencil touched paper bat, became death and bad. He scrubbed his hair, heart rattling. The wall clock ticked like a metronome, driving him forward. Finish it. If you don't, Dad will be disappointed. He breathed deep, but his vision blurred. A tear dropped onto the page, spreading the ink into a gray stain. He wiped it fast, afraid his father would see. But a second fell, then a third. He pulled an old sticky note from the drawer edges, soft and frayed. In his mother's gentle hand, it read, "Slow is smart. Don't rush, my little star." Ronan pressed the paper to his chest, tears running freely. 3 years had passed since she died, and these words were the last small lamp he had left. "I really tried, Mom," he whispered, voice breaking. "But no one believes me. Dad doesn't either." A soft knock. Ronan jumped, shoved the note back into the drawer, and wiped his face. The door eased open, hallway light spilling in. Mrs. Rodriguez, the longtime housekeeper, stepped in with a warm glass of milk. She took in his flushed eyes. "Tomorrow will be better, young sir," she said gently, though the kindness in her gaze somehow made the weight heavier. He nodded and faked a smile. When she left the room, folded back into silence. On the desk, the notebook lay open, scattered with misshapen words. Beside it, the milk still steamed. Ronan sat motionless, staring through the window at the faraway city lights. A question drilled into him. Is there anyone in this world who truly understands me? Or am I always going to be the stupid billionaire's kid with the red Fs? He hugged a pillow and slid under the covers, letting the last tears fall in the dark. Downstairs, Oliver remained in his office, buried in contracts and numbers. They lived under the same magnificent roof, but the distance between them felt colder than the night sky. Morning sunlight slipped through Westfield's classroom windows, catching the dust motes floating in the air. On the board, in neat white chalk, the words, "Spelling Quiz Friday." The room hummed, some kids excited, others groaning. Ronan sat in the back, gripping his pencil. He'd studied late, reading each word over and over beneath the desk lamp, but his heart pounded as if stepping into a courtroom. Ms. Henderson entered, gaze sweeping the room. "Today, we've got a short quiz. Only 10 words. Do your best." Ronan inhaled. "Garden." He wrote fast, then checked. On the page, Graydon. He scratched it out and tried again. Still wrong. Sweat beaded along his hairline. Beautiful. His fingers shook. The word appeared. Beautiful. A small laugh flicked from the next desk. Tyler leaned over with a smirk. "Hey, Lawson needs your dad to buy you a new brain. Pretty sure Tesla doesn't sell those." The row ahead snickered. Ronan swallowed, head dropping further. His heart hammered so loud he could hear it in his ears. He remembered his mother's voice. Slow is smart. He closed his eyes, drew a long breath, and wrote each stroke with care. But when he looked again, the letters were still twisted out of place. The little hope he'd gathered guttered out. 1 minute left. Ms. Henderson called. When the papers were collected, Ronan stared at his a battlefield of cross-outs and childish misspellings. He wanted to hide it, but there was no time. Ms. Henderson frowned as she took it, then gave a small shake of her head. After class, Tyler held up his perfect paper for everyone to see. See not hard. You just have to be smart. Jackson added, maybe Lawson should move down to 3rd grade. That'd fit. Laughter burst open, spilling into the hallway. Ronan clutched his backpack and bolted. He didn't stop in the yard and didn't glance at the familiar Tesla. Instead, he slipped into the library and curled up between soaring shelves. The hardback covers glittered down at him like 1,000 judging eyes. In the hush, Ronan whispered voice, tight, I'm not stupid. I'm just different. So why does no one understand? And in that moment, inside a prestigious school, a 10-year-old boy named Lawson felt more lost than ever. Part 2. The New Housekeeper. Morning in Bel Air was cool and clear, like a crystal glass just lifted from a silver tray. The Lawson estate's iron gates slid open with a breath-soft hush, revealing a gray stone drive that led to a marble portico. Liliana stepped out of the car service in a neat white blouse, hair pinned up clean flats, carrying her steady. She held the strap of a worn leather bag, her mother's, like a calming heartbeat in a world that glittered too bright. Welcome, Miss Fry, said Mrs. Rodriguez, the head housekeeper, with a warm smile. Mr. Lawson values punctuality. I'll always be 10 minutes early, Liliana replied, eyes drifting over the long corridor of abstract paintings, the scent of polished walnut and a thread of lemon oil in the air. They passed a living room with floor-to-ceiling glass drinking in first light, a dark paneled library where book spines stood in perfect lines, and a dining room with a table that stretched like a bridge. On the mantel sat a Christmas photo, Oliver Lawson, in midnight blue, composed, and still one hand on the shoulder of a blonde boy, Ronan, trying to hide a shy smile. Beautiful and cold. Young master attends Westfield. Mrs. Rodriguez lowered her voice. Bright child only. Lately, the tests haven't gone well. Ms. Henderson says he lacks focus. The phrase brushed an old thorn in Liliana's memory. She nodded, offering no comment. In the kitchen, the warm heart of any home, the smell of toast and melting butter wrapped around her. At the island, Ronan hunched over a worksheet pencil, pinched between fingers, brow knit tight. Spelling. Good morning, Liliana said softly, introducing herself. Ronan glanced up, then down again. From a respectful step away, she saw it clearly, B sliding into DP, tangling with Q, the line of writing tilted just enough to drift off the edge. Heavy eraser patches, pencil grooves pressed deep enough to crack the page. His lips sounded words ahead of his hand. His hand then wandered away from his eyes. Would you like me to soften the light on the table, she asked, as if offering a small kitchen courtesy. Sometimes a glossy surface can strain the eyes. Ronan looked up, surprised. Liliana tugged the shade so the sunlight gentled, then set a matte panel beside him, cut from a cereal box, to cover the part of the page he wasn't writing on. Try one line at a time, she murmured, never touching the work. He set the pencil down. Elephant formed at his lips, and on the page, the A stopped jumping in front of the E. She didn't cheer. She only smiled, small and careful, as if one loud sound could burst a soap bubble. When he reached for the eraser, a crumpled sticky note slipped from his case. In soft blue ink, slow as smart. "Don't rush, my little star." Something pinched in Aleliana's chest, exactly what her own mother wrote to her at 7. "My little star." Ronan snatched the note up, hands shaking. It was my mom's," he whispered thread thin. "She's gone." "I'm so sorry," Aleliana said, voice warm as a light blanket. "She left you a very wise truth." The door opened. Oliver in charcoal suit and deep blue silk tie, a trace of dark cologne. His gaze swept over his son, paused a beat on the new woman. Breakfast at 7. Car at 7:40, he said schedule as decree. His eyes flicked to the worksheet. Ronan. Focus. The pencil slipped a fraction. Aleliana stayed still, brown eyes soft, not leaving the child. She didn't claim a role, didn't lecture, only recorded what she knew too well. Letter flips, drifting lines. Eyes, racing hands. Heavy erasures, fear tucked under narrow shoulders. When Oliver left, she said like sharing a harmless secret, "You know, some very smart brains prefer to look at the world in a slightly different order. That's okay. We just have to learn their language." Ronan looked up. For the first time, something lit in his eyes, not the reflection of the downlights, but something warmer hope. By noon, the mansion rested in luxurious quiet. Sunlight spilled across the rose garden. The cut grass smell drifted into the kitchen on an easy breeze. Ronan sat at a small desk by the wall, notebook, open pencil lying across the page. His father had ordered him to rewrite the 10 words you missed this morning before he could go outside. Aleliana stepped in with a folded laundry basket. She meant to pass through, then saw the page, crossed out lines, the constant grind of eraser. Friend to friend to friend. World to rod. Letters writhing, like they were dancing themselves into pieces. "It's hard, isn't it?" she said gently. Ronan flinched, covering the notebook. "No, I'll redo it." She set the basket down and took the chair across from him, distance comfortable and safe. "Do the letters move when you look at them? Like they won't stand still?" His eyes widened. "How do you know a small smile, not pity, but partnership? Because when I was your age, they ran from me too. They spun, they swapped places, they vanished. I hated school. I even hated books." Silence stretched. Then Ronan whispered, "I thought it was only me." His shoulders quivered, the weight of a long-kept secret, easing just a little. Tears glazed his lashes, but his mouth lifted into a fragile smile. For the first time, someone saw him not as lazy, but as a soul in a fight. "No, not only you," Aleliana said, laying her hand on the paper, not on him. "It has a name. It isn't stupidity. It's simply how a brain chooses to view the world. And those brains are often brilliant in ways no one expects." His eyes brightened, then dimmed with fear. "If my dad hears that, he'll think it's an excuse. He doesn't believe in things like that." "Sometimes grown-ups need time to understand," she said steady. "But you are not a mistake, Ronan. You're a story that hasn't been explained the right way yet." Footsteps echoed in the hall. Ronan flipped his notebook closed, hope retreating into its shell. But Aleliana had seen enough. In her heart, a choice settled. She would not let this child grow up believing he was stupid. Evening found the kitchen bright with gold light. The air held the comfort of red wine sauce and toasted bread, yet none of the three at the table truly noticed. Oliver, in a smoke-gray suit back from the office, kept his phone by the wine glass. Urgent emails pulsed across the screen. Ronan sat at the far end, shoulders curled clumsy with knife and fork. "Eat faster," Oliver said, voice dry. "Math test tomorrow. I don't want another email from Ms. Henderson." Ronan stared at his plate. The pre-sliced steak had gone cold. Aleliana set down a salad, and her eye caught the workbook, peeking from the table's corner. One page turned open to slanted lines and a thicket of misspells. Oliver saw it too. His brow tightened, and his fingers tapped the table. Again, he said, "Ronan, why won't you pay attention? Keep this up, and it won't just be F's, it'll be your future." Ronan's mouth pressed thin. His eyes pooled. He tried to speak and couldn't. Leliana hesitated, then said quietly, "Mr. Lawson, I don't believe Ronan is lazy. He may be, seeing print differently than we do." Oliver turned eyes sharp as a blade. "What are you implying? When he works, I see letters flip and trade places. I had the same thing as a child. They call it dyslexia. It doesn't mean unintelligent. It means his brain reads the world through a different lens." Ronan's head lifted, astonished, the spark of hope flaring. Someone had said aloud what he hadn't dared admit. But Oliver cut it down with a thin laugh. "Dyslexia, Ms. Fry. I've hired the best tutors and run all the tests. No one mentioned that. And now, a housekeeper thinks she's spotted what the experts missed." Aleliana breathed in, holding her voice, calm but firm. "I don't mean to overstep. I only know that when I look at Ronan, I see myself as a little girl. I know what it costs to be called lazy. While you're trying so hard it hurts." The room locked up. A fork chimed against china. Oliver gripped the stem of his glass. But it was Ronan's face that made him falter, fear in his eyes and a fragile hope begging to be believed. Oliver set the glass down and leaned back. "You're giving him a crutch. I won't accept it. Lawsons don't look for reasons. We produce results." Ronan's head dropped. The spark turned ash. Eleliana's chest ached. She knew she'd stepped into a hard battle. She also knew if she swallowed her voice now, this boy's new belief would die. Night deepened. Warm lamplight reached down the long hall. Oliver retreated to his study, buried in contracts and calls across time zones. Upstairs, a small study door stayed ajar. A thin beam of light slipped through like a secret. Inside, Ronan curled in a chair, an old notebook, open a scatter of broken pencils nearby. His face was tired eyes still swollen from dinner. Eleliana came in carrying a box of colored overlays and a few thin, transparent sheets. She placed them on the desk. "Your dad thinks you can't focus," she said, gentle but sure. "I think your brain just needs a different language to talk to letters." Ronan looked up, wary and hopeful. She chose a pale blue overlay and laid it over the page. "Try reading again, like you're speaking to a friend. Don't worry about being wrong." He looked down. Something strange and wonderful. The once wavering lines stood still. The letters stopped dancing. He read slow but clear. "The cat ran." Liliana smiled, one hand catching the hem of her blouse to steady herself. "See? You're not stupid. With the right tool, your mind opens like a door." Ronan picked up his pencil and wrote the line again. For the first time, Cat did not warp. He set the pencil down, hands trembling. They're really still. The letters aren't jumping. A tear ran down his cheek, and this time It wasn't shame. It was relief. He turned to her, voice breaking open. I'm not stupid. Right. She shook her head, warm and certain. No, Ronan. You're smart. You just needed someone to believe it. In that moment, the wall around his small heart cracked. Hope slipped in tiny bright. Quietly, Eleliana lifted her phone and snapped a photo of the page, not to boast, but to remind herself every child deserves to be seen correctly. Downstairs, Oliver wrestled numbers and margins, unaware that in his own house, his son had just lived a miracle. An ordinary evening had become a milestone, the first time Ronan felt smart. Keystrokes paused in the study below. Oliver rose heavy steps across dark wood, wine swirling in his hand. He meant to check whether his son was asleep. Passing the upstairs hall, he noticed the light slicing from the small study. His brow knit. Awake at this hour, he pushed the door. The scene stopped him. Ronan sitting straight, eyes brighter than he'd ever seen, pencil steady, Eleliana beside him. On the page, tidy words, no blotted mistakes. Between the book and his son's eyes lay a thin, blue-tinted sheet. Ronan, what are you doing? Oliver's voice dropped, threaded with surprise and doubt. Ronan flinched, hand covering the notebook. Eleliana stood calm. Mr. Lawson, I'm trying another method. Ronan reads and writes better with a colored overlay. Oliver stepped in, lifted the sheet, turned it over in his hand. A cheap piece of plastic is replacing the tutors I've paid thousands for. Are you joking? It isn't a joke, Eleliana said, steady. This is a clear sign of dyslexia. Ronan's brain needs tools that stop print from distorting. Oliver looked at his son. Ronan trembled, but his eyes pleaded, please believe me. For the first time, I don't feel stupid. Oliver's heart tightened, but pride roared back. This was an excuse, a label. No, he said, final. I won't let anyone brand my son with a diagnosis. He needs discipline, more effort. Do your job and leave the child rearing to me, Ms. Fry. Ronan's head bowed. Hope flickered out. His small hand closed around the overlay Oliver had dropped on the desk. Eleliana watched, throat tight. If she let silence win now, the boy's new courage would vanish. She lifted her chin, eyes unwavering. Mr. Lawson, I'm no expert, but I was Ronan. If my mother hadn't believed in me, I'd have grown up thinking I was a failure. Please try believing your son, just once. The air turned heavy, as if the room had been drained of oxygen. Oliver's knuckles blanched around the glass. He didn't answer. He turned and left the door closing firm behind him. In the hush, Ronan folded into the chair, tears spilling over. Eleliana sank to her knees, so their eyes met her voice, a whisper made of steel. Don't be afraid. This secret has been seen now, and I promise I won't let it disappear. Ronan's gaze trembled, but deep inside it, a tiny light remained. Small, yes, but stubborn. Part 3. The Dancing Letters. The dining room stretched like a bridge across the invisible distance between father and son. Crystal chandeliers poured a cold gold over the long table, reflecting off the shining silverware. Oliver Lawson sat at the head, midnight blue suit, tailored to perfection, a Patek glittering at his wrist. His phone lay face down to the right of his plate, but the slightest vibration would have him reach for it, the reflex of a man who ran an empire by schedule and discipline. Opposite him, Ronan seemed swallowed by his chair. On his plate, perfectly cubed steak had gone cold. He tried to eat, swallowing along with the metallic clink of knife and fork, and the taste of defeat. Eleliana cleared the last soup bowl, pausing half a breath beside Ronan like a small anchor in a whirlpool. She noticed him tapping a nervous rhythm at the table's edge, the quiet code of a child holding back tears. Ms. Henderson called Oliver began without preamble. His voice was low, not loud, but it emptied the room of sound. You turned in spelling with basic errors. Again. Lack of focus. Ronan set down his spoon lips pressed thin. Eleliana caught the flick of his glance toward the kitchen cabinet, where she kept the blue overlays, before he looked away, as if afraid of being caught. "Do you have anything to say?" Oliver asked, gaze steady. Sometimes the most dangerous tone is the one that never rises. Ronan drew a breath. His voice came out like a hairline crack. "I tried, but the letters keep moving." A silence settled on the table like a stone. Oliver lifted an eyebrow. "Letters don't have legs, Ronan." That was when Eleliana set the tray down and straightened. She could hear her own heartbeat, not from fear of losing a job, but from fear of losing a child to the undertow of shame. "Mr. Lawson," she said, gentle but clear, "sometimes letters do have legs for brains, like mine used to be, and like Ronan's now." Oliver turned to her eyes, cool and hard. Before he could object, Eleliana looked back to Ronan, opening a window for air to come in. "I saw letters dance too. When I was 7 every night, I wrote B as DP as Q. I thought I was broken. Then my mom laid a blue sheet over the page and said, 'You're not broken. They're just dancing. We'll learn to dance with them.'" Ronan's head lifted. In his eyes, choppy water steadied. "You, too?" "Yes," she nodded. Her lips trembled just a little, but her gaze held firm. "I was scared, just like you." And then one day, the letters stood still. Not because I got smarter overnight, but because someone finally saw me the right way. Across the table, Oliver kept quiet. The chandelier drew a thin sheen of light along his cheekbone. He looked like a man weighing a risky stock. Only this time the capital at stake was his son's heart. Ronan slowly turned his napkin, small fingers smoothing its edge. Then, like the first snowflake touching a windowsill hard to see, but somehow warm, the corner of his mouth lifted. His first smile in days. Small, but enough to change the pressure in the room. The air softened as if the whole house were waiting. Oliver tilted his wine glass, then froze mid-motion. That flicker of a smile startled him. His chest stumbled a beat. It had been so long since his son smiled at dinner. "Is that true?" Ronan whispered, a cautious light in his eyes. "You got tricked by letters too." Leliana smiled and took the chair beside him, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. "Yes. They danced in front of me. House turned into house, friend into friend. I hated school so much I hid under the table. But my mom said, 'You're not dumb. You're seeing the world in a different rhythm.'" Ronan's breath caught. His heart thudded fast. For the first time, an adult didn't mock, didn't push. She named his hurt exactly as if two candles were lighting each other. He let out a small laugh, thin but ringing. The laugh made his tear-swollen eyes turn bright. The redness around his lids softened. Eleliana brushed the back of his hand, not a grip, just enough for him to know, "You are not alone." Oliver watched, and a heaviness sank through him. He wasn't used to conversations built of feeling. He was used to contracts, directives, deliverables. Yet here a stranger had drawn a smile from his son, by acknowledging weakness, and somehow that felt stronger than any tutor or extra class he'd ever paid for. Ronan Oliver said, his voice rougher than before, "Does it truly feel easier this way?" Ronan hesitated, then nodded hard. "Much easier, Dad. The letters. Stand still. I can read without feeling stupid." The words blurred Eleliana's eyes. Without feeling stupid. Each syllable cut like a fine blade, painful, and opening a door to hope. Oliver tightened his hold on the stem gaze, unsteady. He said nothing more, only sipped. But in that instant, he knew something had shifted. Not at Lawson Holdings, here under his own roof. Dinner ended. Oliver excused himself calls with New York and left the table early. His leather soles echoed down the hall. The study door closed with a soft click. In the kitchen, only warm light and the lingering heat of the oven remained. Ronan perched on a high stool by the island legs, swinging, folding his napkin into a tiny block. Water murmured as Eleliana washed dishes. The air felt easier here, nothing like the tightness of the dining room. "Ms. Eleliana." Ronan ventured, voice small, afraid to break the peace. "Yes, love." She turned, drying her hands on her apron. "Could I try reading? At dinner I wanted to, but I was scared Dad would see." Emotion flickered in her eyes. She opened her bag and brought out a worn children's book with a frayed spine, one her mother had kept. She laid a pale blue overlay across the page. "Let's try here. Just you and me. No judges." Ronan took a breath. His pale blue eyes tracked the line. He began, "The little fox ran through the forest." His voice trembled, halting, but it didn't break. Eleliana listened, heart pounding. He read on, slow and sure. When he finished the short passage, he looked up. His face was lit from within. I did it," he whispered, a smile blooming where his chin used to point down. "The letters didn't run away. I really read it." Tears rose in Eleliana's eyes. She held them back, only nodding. "You see, you were never stupid. You just needed a different way to hear the world." Ronan laughed out loud, clear, bright, traveling the width of the big kitchen. He set the book down, and without thinking, threw his arms around her. "Thank you. I thought no one would ever understand." She squeezed his shoulders, voice catching. "You're not alone anymore. We'll learn together how to keep the letters still." Down the hall, a sliver of study light edged the door. Oliver sat alone, wine in hand, eyes lost in the dark. From the kitchen came the sound he hadn't heard in too long, his son's laughter. The house felt different with it, lighter, alive. In the dim corridor, only the dining lamp glowed. Oliver paused there, wine swirling, and through the cracked kitchen door, he saw his boy on the stool, small legs swinging, face lit with joy. Ronan was reading. No stumbles, no stops. Clear words, one after the other. In front of him, the old book, and a blue plastic sheet. Oliver's chest pulled tight. Part of him wanted to step in, fold his son into his arms, and say how proud he was. But another part, the hard, controlling edge of a CEO, whispered that this wasn't the fruit of elite tutors or iron discipline. This was the work of an outsider, a maid. His grip tightened. The glass clicked against his knuckle. "Ms. Fry," Oliver said, voice deep and sudden. Both Ronan and Eleliana jumped. Ronan turned. His bright face dimmed. Eleliana stood instinctively, sliding the book and overlay aside. "Mr. Lawson," she said softly but steady. Oliver stepped in, filling the doorway with his shadow. Now I understand why he's smiling. A cheap piece of plastic, and a few sentimental stories, and he thinks he's escaped failure. It isn't pretend, Eleliana answered, meeting his eyes for the first time. You saw it, Ronan just read. The letters didn't dance. Ronan clung to her sleeve, panic flashing. Dad, I really did it. She helped me see the words. I'm not stupid. For a split second, Oliver met his son's gaze. It wasn't just a plea to be recognized. It was the look of a child who knew that with one denial, the small spark he'd kindled would go out. Something stabbed in Oliver's chest, but pride shouted back, admit this, and you admit you were wrong. All that discipline, all those years meant nothing. He set the glass down hard on the island. His voice turned to iron. Ronan, listen to me. There are no shortcuts. Success doesn't come from tricks like this. Only discipline and effort. Joy shattered on Ronan's face like glass. He dropped his gaze, still gripping the blue sheet. Eleliana watched her own heart twisting. The room grew heavy. Oliver turned and walked out. At the threshold, he paused long enough to hear a choked sob rise behind him. The wine glass trembled in his hand. In the dark, for the first time, he wondered if the failure might be his. Late that night, the mansion fell quiet. Most hallway lights were out. Only the kitchen cast a soft, warm glow. Ronan sat curled on the stool arms, wrapped around his notebook, as if it held a secret that had just been exposed. His face was blotchy from crying. His eyes were swollen. Eleliana took the seat across from him and didn't speak at first. She set a warm glass of milk in front of him, a wisp of vanilla lifting. He didn't touch it. His small shoulders still shook. You know. Her voice drifted in, gently like night air, through a cracked window. Letters danced for me too. They twisted, they spun, they disappeared. I thought I must be dumb. I cried for nights just like you. Ronan looked up surprised. And then someone told me, you're not broken. You're seeing the world to a different beat. From that day, I stopped being afraid of letters. I learned to dance with them. Another tear slid down his cheek, but this time, it wasn't despair. It was release. He smiled through it, his first real smile in months. Really, you were like me. Yes, she said, warm and sure. And do you know what else I learned? How to make the letters stay still. Just like you did tonight. You're not stupid, Ronan. You're different. And different can be a gift. Ronan bit his lip. A small ember kindled in his eyes. I thought I was the only one in the world. No Ronan. She laid her hand lightly over his. You have me now. And soon your father will understand too. For now, believe yourself first. The big kitchen felt suddenly strangely cozy. The clock ticked on, but no longer like a weight. Ronan drew a long breath, hugged his notebook to his chest, and nodded. In that instant, a tiny flame of faith rekindled small but steady against a sky full of doubt. Upstairs, in the dark study, Oliver sat alone at the heavy desk. His wine had gone flat and cool, but his ears still held the echo of his son's laughter. He closed his eyes unsettled. He had never felt so far outside his own child's life. Part 4. The Secret Lesson. Saturday afternoon settled over Bel Air like a quiet velvet curtain. Inside the hushed mansion, Eleliana closed the door to the small room beside the library, where she had just built a makeshift study corner. Only an old wooden desk, a lamp with warm golden light, and her mother's worn brown leather bag set neatly beside it. The faint scent of old paper and thin plastic overlays felt like memory itself. Ronan stepped in his sneakers, stopping at the threshold as if unsure. "Dad's in a meeting in the study," he whispered. "Can we start quickly?" "No rush." Eleliana smiled, opening the bag. Each item appeared like a keepsake: sandpaper letter cards, colored pencils, blue, soft yellow, blush pink overlays, and a stack of math flashcards her mother had drawn by hand. "Today, we'll help your brain talk to numbers with color." "Sound good." Ronan sat knees bumping under the desk. He studied the tools, curious but afraid to hope. What if I get it wrong again? Then we'll learn how to be wrong the right way, she said, warm and steady. Every mistake is a signpost. She set a simple word problem in front of him, printed on cardstock. Jenny has 24 stickers. She gives 7 stickers to a friend, then gets 9 more. "How many stickers does Jenny have now?" Eleliana handed him 3 pencils. Red, blue, green. Blue for start with, red for take away, green for add. Circle the keywords in their colors as you read. Ronan drew a breath and slid the blue overlay over the line the letters stopped dancing. He circled 24 in blue, gave 7 in red, and 9 more in green. Finger on the page, he murmured, "Blue first. Red means minus. Green means plus." Good. Eleliana nodded. "Now draw it." She set down a strip of grid paper. Ronan colored 24 squares blue, crossed out 7 in red, then added 9 green. The colors rose and fell like a steady breath. Subtract, add, everything held in his view, not slipping off the page. How many now? He began to count, lips moving, his heartbeat, finding the rhythm of his pencil. 17 plus 9. 26. He wrote 26. His hands stilled, his eyes widening like he didn't quite believe himself. "I did it." He exhaled as if a bolt slid back from a locked door. "I really did it." Eleliana swallowed a sting rising in her nose. She didn't clap or cheer. She simply slid over a star sticker, the kind her mother used to give. "Put it right here." She pointed to the corner of the page. "First win of the day." Ronan pressed on the star, then looked up. A smile opened across his small face, no longer shy, lit from the inside, as if someone had flipped a switch in his chest. "Ms. Eleliana, I'm not stupid. I just need color." Outside the window, late light melted along the leaves. Downstairs, Oliver's voice still drifted faintly through a phone line. But here, in this little room, another kind of light had been lit, the light of belief, after a first victory. "Again?" Eleliana asked softly. "Again?" Ronan nodded hard, already reaching for the green pencil, ready for the next problem, like he was ready for a different way to learn. By late afternoon, the window frame glowed with sunset, washing the Lawson study nook in warm gold. Ronan sat straight, her eyes shining as if he'd found treasure. In front of him, Eleliana laid out colorful math cards. At his elbow, a small box brimmed with star, lightning bolt, and galaxy stickers. "Now we're turning math into a game," she said, conspiratorial and bright. "Every time you solve one, you choose a sticker for your achievement board." Ronan raised his brows. "But if I mess up?" "Then we add a gray cloud sticker to remind us clouds can cover the sun, but only for a while. The sun always comes back." He gave a small laugh, the second one today light but real. Eleliana handed him another card. "A store has 35 apples. It sells 18. Then it gets 12 more. How many apples are there now? I'll try the colors," Ronan said. He circled 35 in blue, 18 in red, 12 in green. First, 35 minus 18. He drew squares, colored, crossed out. "That's 17. Then add 12, 29. Write it." He wrote 29. He lifted his gaze, holding his breath. Eleliana smiled and nudged the sticker box. Your choice. His small hands trembled. He chose a silver star and placed it right beside the 29. When it stuck, he laughed out loud, the sound filling a room that usually only knew the ticking clock. "I've never solved one that fast," he whispered, eyes bright. In class, the letters and numbers get tangled. But here, they stay still. They listen to me. Liliana's vision blurred. She kept her smile steady. She touched the edge of the page. They don't just listen to you. They're dancing to your rhythm. You're leading the dance. Ronan bit his lip, but the smile wouldn't fade. For the first time, he didn't feel like the boy surrounded by F's. He felt like the choreographer of letters and numbers. Footsteps sounded in the hall. Oliver's pausing for a beat, then moving on. He didn't come in, but in that brief stop, he heard the laughter rising from the little room, an uncommon sound in a house that hadn't had much of it. As the light thinned, Ronan's confidence flared again. This time, it didn't just flicker. It banked into a small, steady flame, promising a bigger win tomorrow. Night folded over the Bel Air garden beyond the window. In the study corner, the desk lamp glowed like a small private sky, where only Ronan and Liliana existed. The page in front of him was half covered in stickers now. Each silver star, each gold bolt was a small victory worth more to him than anything expensive his father had ever bought. Liliana slid a more complex card across the desk. A company has 126 employees. 48 are transferred to another branch. Then 37 are hired. How many employees are there now? Ronan's eyes skipped across the numbers, heart picking up. 126. He bit his lip. That's big. I'm scared I'll mess up. Liliana sat level with his eyes, voice warm. Remember the sticker rules? If it's wrong, we add a gray cloud. Clouds don't end the day. They're just part of the road. Ronan's eyes trembled, but he nodded. He circled 126 in blue, 48 in red, 37 in green. He wrote the subtraction. 126, 48 hand, a little shaky. Ms. Liliana? He faltered. I'm not sure I can subtract it. Break it down. 126, 40, Marissa, 86. Then 86, 8, 78. Ronan's eyes brightened. He wrote 78. Now add 37. He took the green pencil, sketched 78 squares, then added 37 more. He counted slowly, lips moving. 115. The room seemed to hold its breath. Ronan looked up, eyes wide. I got it. 115. His voice rang, not shaky now, but confident. Liliana bit her lip against a rising tear and held out the sticker box. Choose the biggest star. He picked a galaxy strip and pressed it in the center of the page. He laughed, eyes shining with pure joy. I've never done a big number problem right. In class, I leave it blank. Tonight you proved you don't give up, she said softly, thick with pride. You win by your own way. He propped his chin in his hands and admired the tiny galaxy like a treasure. In that moment, he wasn't the boy haunted by failing grades. He was a conqueror writing his first victory into his own little universe. The library door opened unexpectedly. Oliver stepped in, a thick folder in hand, face lined from a long day of meetings. He'd come for a few reference books before tomorrow's negotiations, but the scene in front of him made him stop. Ronan sat at the desk, eyes bright with 1,000 small stars. In front of him, a thick sheet glittered with stickers, silver stars, a galaxy ribbon, bright bolts of lightning. The little room, once austere, now pulsed with color. Liliana sat opposite her, face lit with her student's joy. Dad, Ronan said, voice tight with hope and nerves. I did it. 3-digit math. I got it right. Miss Leliana showed me how to use color. I'm not stupid anymore. See, Oliver walked closer, eyes scanning the page. Correct numbers, clean work. And those stickers evidence of a string of small victories. His heart thudded. For a split second, he saw a different Ronan. No bent head, no silent tears, just a confident boy, hungry to be seen. Then the CEO armor slid back into place. Oliver frowned. All of this, he gestured at the stickers, is just a game. The world won't hand you a sticker when you get it right. It only counts the final result. Ronan's smile stalled. He bit his lip. His hand crept over his galaxy ribbon as if to shield it. The light in his eyes dimmed. Leliana's fingers tightened. She gathered her courage. Mr. Lawson, to an adult, this may look like a game. But to a child who believed he was stupid, every sticker is a door. It's proof he can. Look carefully. Your son didn't just solve one problem. He climbed a mountain. Oliver looked at her, conflict flickering in his eyes. He wanted to dismiss it, to keep his iron logic. But Ronan's bright laughter kept echoing in his mind. A sound he hadn't heard in months. He drew a long breath and closed the folder. Enough for today. Ronan bed early. Big day tomorrow. He turned and left. At the door, his shoulders sank a fraction. The folder trembled in his hand. Inside, a small voice said, maybe, I've been wrong. Back in the room, Ronan sagged, but Leliana rested her hand on the sticker page. Did you see it? She murmured. Even if he didn't say it, his eyes were different. He saw you. And soon he'll believe. Late that night, the Lawson mansion went still. On the second floor, Ronan's room glowed, only with a small nightlight, its soft blue pooling on the white walls. He lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. On the desk in the corner, the sticker page shimmered in the dark like a private sky. He slipped from bed, bare feet, sinking into thick carpet, and padded to the desk. He touched the tiny galaxy strip, the silver stars, the bright bolts. His fingers shook, but his face warmed with a fragile new faith. I really did it, he whispered, as if the spell might break if he spoke too loud. Not stupid, not broken. I just needed to be seen a different way. His eyes reddened, but this time, not with shame, with pride. He took one last sticker from the box, a bright sun, and pressed it to the corner of the page. Tomorrow, I'm going to win again, he told himself, voice wavering but sure. I promise, I won't give up anymore. He hugged the page to his chest and slipped back under the covers. Outside, the night lay deep and indigo. But in this room, a small heartbeat steadier lit by new belief. Downstairs in the study, Oliver sat alone. His wine glass had long gone empty. He closed his eyes, and the sound of his son's bright laughter from the secret lesson kept echoing. For the first time in years, he felt uncertain. And perhaps that uncertainty was the first step toward learning how to be a father. The cold mansion seemed to find a new pulse, the heartbeat of a child who had finally felt he could win, and of a man struggling to learn how to trust. Part 5. The boarding school. Threat night fell over the Lawson estate with the polished stillness of steel. In the kitchen, the island light cast a cold sheen across the marble. The dishwasher hummed behind a closed door, the steady breath of a wealthy house at rest. Oliver Lawson leaned against the counter water glass in his left-hand phone to his ear. with the right, his voice dry, precise, as if reading contract clauses. Yes, Brookfield Academy. This is Oliver Lawson. I'm calling about the January intake for a fourth-grade student. On the other end, a professional woman's voice flowed like velvet. We're a boarding school focused on discipline and self-reliance, a highly structured environment. For the first 6 weeks, we limit visits so students can acclimate. Yes, sir, our Foundations program helps them reset their study habits. Oliver paced the kitchen floor, his shadow sliding long across the tile. I need a place that cuts off distractions. My son Ronan, 10 years old. Bright, but unfocused. At-home indulgence makes him soft. I want discipline. At the far end of the hall, Ronan slipped out for a glass of water. He clutched his sticker sheet, his private sky he carried everywhere like a talisman. The word Brookfield froze him in place. He edged behind the half-open pantry door, heart pounding like a drum. "Do you still have space for January?" Oliver asked, voice cool. "Exactly 1 spot, sir," the woman purred. "Tuition includes 24/7 supervision. We recommend limiting contact for the first 4 weeks so students detach from prior patterns. The deposit is non-refundable." Ronan's grip went numb on the doorframe. Detach from prior patterns. Limited contact. Each word fell like a hammer. In his head, letters and numbers stopped dancing. They turned into heavy black streaks pressing on his chest. He looked down at the sticker sheet in his hand. The little galaxy ribbon trembled with his quick breath. No visits in the first month. Mandatory, Oliver pressed. "We believe in a shock of routine, sir. Removing sources of comfort to build independence. Results are excellent." At that, Ronan's fingers slipped. A silver star, peeled free, fluttered to the stone floor and clicked small but sharp as a pin. He dropped to his knees, shaking as he picked it up. "Remove sources of comfort. I'm the distraction. Brookfield, a place that doesn't need my laughter." Oliver's tone fell a shade lower, like a man who'd reached a decision. "Send me the contract and deposit information. I want to finalize this week." "Yes, I understand the non-refundable terms." The dishwasher stopped exactly as the call ended. Silence swallowed the room. Oliver set the phone down, steel gray eyes fixed on nothing, unaware that behind the pantry door, a small boy was hugging a wrinkled sticker sheet to his chest, as if it were his cracked heart. Ronan pressed his forehead to the cool wood. In the dark, he heard himself whisper, not to any adult, but to himself, "Don't cry. If I'm quiet, if I get better, Dad won't send me away." Out there, it felt like a piece of Connecticut night had settled over Beverly Hills. Inside, a small heart cinched tight, and a fear of abandonment began to bloom. Morning flooded the Lawson kitchen with sunlight, but to Ronan, it only made the emptiness sharper. At the table, Oliver was already seated with black coffee. His laptop glowed with a wall of appointments. The keyboard's steady clack sounded like a hammer against a 10-year-old's chest. Ronan slid into the chair across from him, face lowered over his cereal. Milk dribbled to the rim. He didn't bother to wipe it. In his jacket pocket, the sticker sheet was crushed, a silver star stuck back on at a crooked angle. He didn't dare take it out, afraid his father's eyes would land on it. "Eat faster," Oliver said without looking up. "I have an important call at 8. Ronan nodded, the spoon clinking against the bowl. In his head, Brookfield's phrases replayed limited contact. Detach from old habits. He swallowed hard. Each bite scraped down like sharp little stones. Eleliana came in and set a carafe of orange juice on the table. One glance at Ronan's hunched shoulders and the purple shadows under his eyes told her enough. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked quietly. "I'm fine." He blurted the words, trembling like a string about to snap. Oliver closed the laptop, then frowning as he caught Ronan's evasive gaze. "Is something wrong? I heard noise in the kitchen last night." Ronan tightened his grip on the spoon, heartbeat rattling. The words he'd told himself returned. "Don't cry. If I'm quiet, Dad won't send me away." "No, I just got thirsty," he said, forcing a thin smile over the weight in his voice. Eleliana met his red-rimmed eyes and felt her own chest seize. She knew he'd heard something that had torn open the fragile hope they'd just kindled. A drop of milk slipped from the spoon and pooled on the table, a small white crescent. Ronan bowed his head and whispered, barely audible, "If I study harder, you won't send me away, right?" The air froze solid. Oliver's hand halted mid-lift with the coffee cup. Eleliana inhaled, fingers clenching the edge of the tablecloth to keep from crying. Oliver looked at his son. A flicker crossed his eyes, and then the practiced calm of a CEO returned. He didn't answer immediately. He took a sip of coffee instead, bitter filling his mouth. But inside, something jabbed too sharply to ignore. Ronan sat there, a small heart suspended, waiting for any answer. The silence rang like a verdict. After breakfast, Oliver left with his briefcase and his severe composure. The Bentley's engine purred at the gate and faded away. The mansion fell back into its familiar hush. Ronan remained in the kitchen, spoon in a bowl of cereal, gone to mush milk, gone gray. His chin propped on his palm shoulders, sagging. He stared through the glass toward the wide front lawn. Eleliana washed plates quietly, but her heart felt strangled. Last night she'd suspected, and now, after the question, "You won't send me away, right?" she knew Ronan had heard the Brookfield call. She dried her hands and sat beside him. "Ronan, is there something you want to tell me?" He shook his head, but his fingers worried the edge of his jacket pocket where he'd hidden the sticker sheet. His eyes skittered like waves. "You can trust me," she said softly, her voice like a warm quilt wrapped around his fear. "I won't tell anyone until you're ready." He bit his lip, held it in, and then the sob cracked through. He pulled the wrinkled page from his pocket, the crooked silver star fogged with fingerprints. "Dad called Brookfield. I heard everything. They said, no seeing Dad for 4 weeks. Do you know what that means? They want to cut me off from him." Eleliana set a hand to his back, stroking slowly. "When did you hear last night?" "In the kitchen." Tears swam again. "I tried. I studied. I filled the page with stickers. But I guess it isn't enough. Dad still thinks I'm a problem. If I get better faster, he'll keep me, right?" Eleliana's throat closed. It wasn't a question for an answer. It was a flare fired by a heart terrified of being left. She gathered him into a hug and let his tears soak her shoulder. "Ronan, listen to me." Her voice shook, but it held. "You are not a burden. You don't have to be better to be loved by your father. You are enough right now, exactly as you are." He broke into a full cry, clinging to her like the last safe shore. Eleliana shut her eyes and made a silent vow. "Whatever happens, I will not let this child believe that love must be earned. Sun climbed over the windows, lighting the elegant kitchen that still felt cold. In one small corner, two souls held tight against a fear of being torn apart. By noon, Los Angeles blazed bright. The gates parted, and the black Bentley rolled over the gravel. Oliver stepped out, suit, still immaculate face pulled taut. The meeting had ended early, and his mind was not at rest. Something in his son's eyes that morning had driven him back. He pushed into the kitchen and stopped. Ronan was buried against Leliana's shoulder, his small hands clutching her as if letting go would make the world collapse. Her blouse was wet where his face had been. Ronan Oliver's voice came low surprise, laced with displeasure. The boy jerked upright, swiping at his face tremors he couldn't hide. Leliana squeezed his shoulder and turned to face Oliver. "You're home early." Oliver moved closer, expression stern. "What's going on here? Why is my son sobbing in a housekeeper's arms?" Ronan froze, eyes swimming. I just... He heard the call last night. Leliana cut in, voice calm and sharp as a blade. "Brookfield." Oliver faltered. Confusion flickered, then he masked it with the usual chill. "And I'm his father. I decide what's best for him." "What's best?" Leliana echoed. "To send him to a strange place that forbids seeing his father for a month, when what he needs most is to be believed in," and guided Oliver's fingers tightened around his briefcase strap tendons standing out. "You have no idea the pressure I carry. I can't let a string of F's wreck his future." "No, Leliana," said, her tone softened, but her eyes fierce. "The F's won't wreck his future. The fear of being abandoned by his father, that will. Did you hear him? He believes he has to be better to be allowed to stay." Oliver looked at Ronan. The boy ducked away from his gaze, hands shaking around the crushed sticker sheet. I'll get better, Dad. Please don't send me away. I promise." The plea landed like a knife in Oliver's chest. For an instant, the CEO mask cracked, and the bewildered eyes of a man who didn't know how to hold his child looked out. He drew a breath, but no words came. Silence fell, broken only by the clock's tick. A little boy's heart hung there, waiting to see if his father would keep him or let him go. The study door shut with a heavy thud that rolled down the hall. Oliver threw his briefcase onto the desk and wrenched at his tie as if the silk were choking him. On the screen, an email from Brookfield Academy glowed. "Enrollment agreement, January intake. Deposit required within 72 hours. He sank into the chair, palms pressed to his temples. The scene in the kitchen would not leave him, Ronan clinging to a Leliana, voice cracking. "I'll get better, Dad. Please don't send me away." He opened the email. The cursor hovered over download contract. His CEO mind, the part that made clean, cool decisions, whispered, "Pay the deposit. Brookfield is disciplined elite. This is the only way to salvage his performance." But something else, the father's heart roared back. "If you send him away, he'll believe your love has terms. That to be near you, he must be perfect." His fist clenched, arm trembling. On the desk, beside the laptop, lay a page he'd grabbed from the kitchen without noticing the wrinkled sticker sheet. A crooked silver star, a bent little galaxy ribbon, and in the corner, the tiny sun he'd stuck on last night. Oliver picked it up. His thumb felt the rough glue. His vision blurred. This wasn't childish scrap. It was a victory log for a 10-year-old who'd once believed he was stupid. Each star was a moment Ronan trusted that he could. And Oliver, the father his son needed most, was about to wipe it all away with a cold contract. God. Oliver's voice rasped as he pressed the page to his chest. What am I doing? The phone rang. Brookfield Admissions flashed on the screen. Oliver stared, breath quickening. For a split second, he saw two roads. One sign the contract, keep the CEO image intact, and lose his son's heart. Two break the plan and face what he couldn't control, love. The ringtone reached the 10th chime and died. Oliver lowered his face into his hands. The room went utterly still. For the first time in years, he was afraid not of losing a deal, not of failing in the market, but of losing Ronan. Forever. Outside the door, Leliana stood motionless, listening to the heavy rise and fall of his breathing. She clenched her hands, knowing this was the hinge where a man must choose between the power of his chair and the heart of his child. Part 6. Trial Day. Saturday morning. The Lawson estate ran like a small company. Catering staff rolled silver carts down the hall. The ground floor conference room blazed with ceiling lights, and the LED screen already showed the title slide, Peterson Contingency Plan. Oliver, in charcoal suit and deep blue tie, stood at the center like a general before battle. His voice was low and steady. We'll run this in 3 beats. Risk review options, negotiation. No interruptions. The doors closed. The murmur of partners sank into the floor below. Upstairs, Leliana eased shut the door to Ronan's room. The space instantly became another world. Shears half-drawn, honeyed light pooling on the rug. In the middle, an old wooden table covered with a cream canvas mat. On it, her mother's toolkit sandpaper letter cards, wooden counting rods, jar lids sorted by shade, blue and amber overlays a few glass marbles, and a tiny metronome to keep attention in time. On the wall, 3 A3 sheets read, Look, Touch, Rhythm. Ronan stepped in, hesitating on the threshold. Far below, he could faintly hear men debating valuation. Shareholders roadmap the language that had left him stranded so many dinners before. In here, the language changed color tempo hands. Today. Special class, he asked, cautious and eager at once. A class for a brain that knows how to paint a universe, Leliana said, placing clear, plastic glasses with a thin blue film into his hands. We're going to make letters and numbers stand still when you tell them to. She clicked the metronome tick. Tock. Tick. Tock. Then slid over a large print word problem lines spaced wide for easy eyes. A rescue team starts with 24 bottles of water. They give away 9 at Station A, then receive 17 at Station B. How many bottles are left? Rules, she said, pacing her words to the beat. Blue is the starting amount. Red is what you give away. Green is what you add. Each move goes on a beat. Ronan put on the glasses and laid the blue film over the page. The lines stopped dancing. On tick, he circled 24 in blue. On tock, he crossed out 9 in red. On tick, he shaded in 17 in green. 24 minus 9 is 15. He whispered, eyes glued to the colors. 15 plus 17, 32. He wrote 32 with a hand steadier than usual. Leliana didn't clap. She turned her notebook and showed him a brain scan image from her mother's files, lit up regions for reading. Here's what you just did. You switched on the rhythm color space network. You used the whole instrument in your head, not just one key. Ronan looked at the scan, then at his own 32. The corner of his mouth quivered, then bloomed. A smile so bright it felt like a window opening in his eyes. I really can control them. Out in the hall, Oliver's footsteps slowed for a beat. Through the crack in the door, he caught the tiny metronome, his son leaning over the page, hand moving in time like a small conductor, guiding an orchestra of letters and numbers. The argument downstairs still rumbled, but here another kind of music had begun. On the table glass, marbles spilled from an old jar, rolling with a cheerful clink. Eleliana grouped them. 10 blue, 10 red, 10 yellow. This is your troop, she smiled, setting an empty wooden box beside them. I'm the commander. Ronan blinked, fingers trembling a little. Yes. Today's mission, get them across the desert without losing anyone. He straightened, eyes shining. Eleliana laid down another card. A caravan carries 30 liters of water. They drink 12 liters. Then they find 8 more liters. How much water remains? 30 blue marbles, she reminded him. Ronan bent over, carefully counted out 30 blue marbles, and lined them up. The metronome kept time tick. Talk. They drink 12, that means you sweep away 12 with red marbles. He slid them out, counting softly. That leaves 18. Then they find 8, add 8 yellow. He dropped them in one by one, each clink like a bell. 26. He wrote 26 in firm strokes, no tremor this time. He laughed, boyish, bubbling. Ms. Eleliana, math is like building a little city. I can see it. Her throat tightened. Exactly, Ronan. Your brain isn't failing, it's different. It needs play to bloom. Downstairs, Oliver wrapped up his segment. The partners applauded. He stepped into the hall, still holding his deck of slides, and in that brief pause, he heard his son's laughter float upward. Not the snickers of classmates, but a sound of clear, confident joy. Strange music in a house that had known so little of it. He stood still for a few seconds, fingers tightening on the slide stack. Inside that tiny lab, his son was finding himself, and the realization shook the iron composure of a powerful CEO. The metronome kept its pulse while late morning sun gilded the desk. Eleliana pulled out a small whiteboard and drew simple icons, a plate, a cup, a box of cookies. Imagine you're opening a mini cafe today, she said, half serious, half playful. Cookies are $2 each. Lemonade is $3 a glass. If you sell 5 cookies and 4 lemonades, how much do you take in? Ronan blinked. Then his eyes went wide. I'm the owner. Correct. You're the tiny CEO. Every decision needs math. He jumped up and wrote with a dry erase marker, 5 cookies, X2 or $10, 4 lemonades, X3 to $12 total. Should $22. His fingers still shook a little, but his strokes were sure. He turned face lit like headlights. $22. My shop made a profit, Ms. Eleliana. His shout rang through the room. He hugged the whiteboard to his chest, grinning without a single shadow. I can do money like Dad. I'm like Dad, right? Eleliana stilled. In the sentence, she heard joy and a hunger. The hunger to be seen by his father. She stepped in, slipped the board from his arms, and ruffled his messy hair. You're not only like your dad, you're you, and you're wonderful in your own way. In the hall, the door stood ajar. Oliver was motionless, slides in one hand, the other pressed to his chest. He had seen it all. In the eyes of a man usually frozen to the market's temperatures, something cracked. The image of his small boy smiling beside a whiteboard clashed against the cold picture of Brookfield in his mind. If he sent Ronan away, would he kill this smile? He turned, closed the door gently, and went back to the meeting. But the project slides blurred, leaving only one echo. I'm like you, right, Dad? By afternoon, the conference downstairs droned on voices, clicking pens. The soft ring of glasses, a relentless soundtrack. Oliver stepped into the hall to take a call from a major client voice, even as a machine. Standing by the second floor railing, he heard it again from Ronan's room. Hoora's laughter, the clatter of glass marbles. He ended the call and drifted toward the slightly open door. Inside, Liliana set down a tougher problem. A company must cater a party for 45 people. Each person needs 2 cookies and 1 drink. If each box holds 12 cookies, and each crate has 6 bottles, each bottle makes 3 drinks. How many cookie boxes and drink crates are needed? Ronan stared. So many numbers. So many steps. His chest rose and fell. I'm scared I can't. That's okay. Liliana soothed hand light on his shoulder. We'll break it down. First 45 people need how many cookies? 45 x 2, 90 cookies. He whispered, lips moving. Good. 1 box holds 12, 90 divided by 12. Ronan built clusters of 12 with marbles counting groups. 7 groups. Shocker 84 with 6 left. So we need 8 boxes. His eyes sparked. He wrote 8 cookie boxes. Great. Drinks 45 glasses needed. 1 crate has 6 bottles. Each bottle makes 3 glasses, so 18 glasses per crate. How many crates? He grouped yellow marbles in sets of 18, then counted 2 groups. Azure 36, add 1 more. 54. 3 crates. He cheered, face flushed with happiness. I did it, Miss Liliana. I just ran a real party. She smiled, eyes glistening. Ronan, you just proved you think like a CEO, organized step by step. You're no failure. You only needed a way for your brain to shine. Outside, Oliver gripped the railing. His heart lurched. He no longer saw a boy shadowed by Fs. He saw a 10-year-old successfully planning a catering event, the very sort of task seasoned staff occasionally bungled. My God, he whispered, voice thinning. He really did it. Inside, Ronan hugged the whiteboard, eyes sparkling like he'd found the key to a new world. And outside, for the first time, a CEO father felt the ice around his heart split. The door creaked open. Both Ronan and Liliana turned. Oliver stood there in his tailored gray suit, but the usual glassy detachment was gone from his eyes. He took in the transformed learning lab, scattered marbles, color cards, a whiteboard crowded with numbers and stickers. Ronan clutched the board tighter, heart galloping. Dad, he said softly, testing the water, afraid a single harsh word would shatter everything. Oliver stepped in leather soles, whispering on the rug. He looked at the board. 8 boxes, 3 crates. Clean, correct. In his head, Brookfield's cold mantra replayed remove comfort to build discipline. But right here, his son had just shown he only needed a different path. You did all this yourself? Oliver asked, voice low. Ronan nodded, mouth trembling. Ms. Liliana guided me, but I did the math. Look, Dad, I organized a whole party. Liliana stayed quiet, eyes on Oliver as if asking, will you dare to see your son with new eyes? Oliver reached out and touched the corner of the whiteboard, a small gesture that made Ronan hold his breath. Then, instead of a reprimand, Oliver gave a brief nod. Good job, Ronan. 3 small words, and the boy's face lit like a galaxy. His laugh tumbled out bright and unafraid. Liliana turned away, tears pricking her lashes. Oliver felt something burst open in his chest. In that moment, he wasn't a market-hardened CEO. He was just a father, seeing his child shine for the first time. and the sharpest fear rose up. If he signed Brookfield's contract, he might smother this light forever. He turned aside to hide the quake in him, but the answer had already settled. It wasn't in the slides downstairs. It lived in the smile that had just opened across his son's face. Part 7. The Defining Choice. Night bled across the glass walls of Oliver's private office like spilled ink. From the high floor, Los Angeles flickered below. Like a giant control panel, the city Oliver Lawson had learned to steer with deals and numbers. On the walnut desk, 2 folders lay side by side, like rails about to split on the left term sheet. Henderson Financial 7 cold gleaming figures. On the right, UCLA Learning Differences Center, request for evaluation. Ronan Lawson's name typed in plain black. Oliver slipped off his watch and rolled it across the desk. The second hand kept moving, but time itself felt stalled. He skimmed the Henderson contract, thick paper, sharp edges, the smell of fresh ink, and paused at the line delivery timeline, travel to New York, 2 weeks. His mind filled with calls, handshakes, late-night returns. And then it filled with one sound from earlier that day, his son's bright laughter, the sound he feared would go dark if he chose wrong. He turned to the UCLA request. The paper was thinner, a soft yellow, a faint blue smudge at the corner, probably from Ronan's reading overlay. Oliver rubbed the stain, and somewhere in memory, a tiny metronome kept ticking, tick, tock. A brain that knows how to paint a universe, Eleliana had said. The phrase clung to him like a trace of perfume that wouldn't fade. His phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Henderson, can we lock this tonight? A second ping followed. Brookfield admissions deposit link 72H. 2 white lines on a black screen, 2 blades. Oliver's thumb hovered wavering. He shut his eyes, and the day reeled back like film. Ronan hugging a whiteboard, shouting, "I'm like you now, right?" Those small hands, grouping marbles, by 12s, calm as a tiny project manager. And Eleliana's steady, unflinching eyes when she said, "F's don't kill a child's future." The fear of being abandoned by his father does. His throat went dry. He stood, went to the bar, poured a splash, set the glass down untouched. Loss on the trading floor, he could survive that. But failure at fatherhood, the thought made his hands shake. Then something caught the light. The Henderson term sheet had a silver star sticker stuck to its corner. Ronan must have pressed it there when he ran in clutching his work. The star was crooked, the glue rough. Oliver stopped. Carefully, he peeled the star away and placed it on the first page of the UCLA packet directly over Ronan. A sharp ache broke in his chest, like a flash cutting through all his logic. He went back to the desk and held the phone's side button. The ringer died. The world fell quiet. He opened a new email and typed slow but sure, "Dr. Williams, this is Oliver Lawson. I'd like to confirm the earliest possible evaluation for Ronan. I will be there." The cursor hovered over send. Out there, $1 million was waiting. Here, a 10-year-old heart needed keeping. Oliver drew a long breath, shoulders sagging as if he'd set down armor. He clicked send. A soft whoosh. One invisible door slammed shut and another opened. The room held only his heartbeat and the imagined tick, tock. On the desk, the silver star rested on Ronan Lawson, glinting like the first seal on the right decision. Night still pooled thick beyond the glass. Oliver dropped into the leather chair and covered his face with both hands. He'd hit send, and it felt like the empire he'd built was swaying. The Henderson deal, 7 figures, a financial lifeline, sat one signature away. But he had chosen his son. The phone buzzed again. His assistant's voice spilled through the speaker. Mr. Lawson Henderson wants to close before New York sunrise. If not, they'll pull and go with a competitor. Should I fly in your place? Oliver looked up. Voice sounded raw. He swallowed, eyes hot. No. No one goes in my place. If they pull, they pull. But you've courted them for 3 years. This is the pivot deal. I know he snapped, then went quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was low, trembling, but firm. But my son is only 10 once. I won't lose that for a contract. He hung up. His hand dropped onto the Henderson file. The heavy stack flopped open, exposing the last line termination clause. He read it and felt the cut. If he didn't sign, Lawson Group risked losing the restructuring window investor confidence momentum. He shut his eyes. Morning replayed. Ronan hugging the board, crying. I'm like you now, right? Another fear rushed in. If the deal failed, if cash thinned, would Ronan have to change schools, leave their home, lose all the chances Oliver wanted for him? He jumped up and paced, heart hammering. The glass walls threw back the image of a man split in two. In the market, he never hesitated. Here, learning to be a father, he felt like a clumsy apprentice, standing at the hardest choice of all, letting go of ego, stepping down from the throne of success. He stopped and set his hand on the UCLA packet. The paper was flimsy, easy to tear, worthless to the market. But it held a name, Ronan Lawson, and a crooked silver star. Oliver let out a laugh that broke into a wet sound. No one would pay for this paper, he whispered, but it's the whole world. He pulled a chair close and wrote a letter by hand, something he hadn't done in years. Ronan, I choose you. Even if I lose Henderson, I will keep what matters most. You are the only contract I'll never finish signing, and I'll spend my life completing it. His strokes were clipped, but shaking, each blot of ink thudding like his heart. When he set the pen down, his shoulders felt lighter, as if a locked room inside him had opened. Outside, Los Angeles glittered as always. Inside it was the small light from a silver sticker that rekindled a father's faith. Dawn slid a thin band of gold through the blinds. Oliver was still at the desk suit, unchanged shadows under his eyes. In front of him, the handwritten letter to Ronan sat tucked under the UCLA packet. Beside it, Henderson's contract lay like a block of ice, heavy and suddenly hollow. A knock. Liliana stepped in with a breakfast tray. She paused, surprised to find Oliver still there, tie loosened, drawn, but brighter somehow. You didn't sleep, she asked, setting down the tray. Oliver looked up. A beat of silence, then a rough-edged laugh, the sound of a weight set down. I spent the night choosing between 2 sheets of paper, and for the first time in my life, I picked the right one. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? He slid the UCLA file toward her, the crooked silver star still clinging to the corner. I canceled Henderson. I confirmed with Dr. Williams. Today, I'm going with Ronan. Liliana froze palm on the packet, eyes filling. You really walked away from $1 million? Oliver smiled, weary and clear. Not walked away. Let go at the right moment. I've chased numbers so long, I forgot some things can't be priced. He paused, voice dropping thick with gratitude. Thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have heard my son. I only saw grades. I didn't see his smile. She bowed her head, tears sliding freely. I only did what my mother did for kids like Ronan. But you You're the person he needs most. Don't ever forget that. Oliver nodded, eyes bright. I forgot I was a father for too long. From today on, no contract outranks this one. He set his hand on the UCLA file, voice sure. Protect Ronan. Let him know he's enough even when the whole world calls him a failure. In that moment, Eleliana saw a different Oliver. Not a powerful CEO, but a wounded man relearning how to love. And on the stairs, Ronan listened, clutching a new sticker page he'd drawn, a bright red heart. A careful smile opened on his face. That afternoon, the Bentley rolled gently down Wilshire. Inside, the air felt new. Instead of tense silence and the clatter of his father's keys, there was only a 10-year-old's held breath. Ronan sat in back, twisting the new sticker page in his hands, red heart, in the middle crooked silver stars around it. At every red light, he glanced up at the rearview mirror and met his father's eyes. Oliver's grip tightened on the wheel. He had walked into meetings with millions on the line, but never with a heart pounding like this. Today wasn't a deal. Today was his son's spirit. They turned into the UCLA Learning Differences Research Center. Glass and late fall red maples caught the light. Ronan swallowed, eyes round. Dad, what if I fail here? Oliver turned, braced an arm on the seat, and met his son's gaze. Listen to me. There's no failing here. You just need to be yourself. Every different part of you has value. Tears gathered. Ronan shook his head, voice trembling. You've never said that before. Oliver laid a warm hand across those narrow shoulders. Because I didn't know how. Today I want you to remember, no matter what anyone says to me, you are already enough. Ronan pressed the sticker page to his chest, eyes lighting as if he'd found a harbor. In the passenger seat, Eleliana turned away to hide her tears. She whispered, Today isn't only Ronan's evaluation. It's a father's too. Oliver nodded, drew a breath, and the three of them stepped out. The glass doors parted, warmth spilling toward them. One tentative step for Ronan, one steady step for Eleliana, and one shaking but determined step for Oliver. In that stride, he understood he wasn't just entering a research center. He was entering a new chapter of fatherhood where the heart outranked the contract and his son's smile was worth more than any million. Dr. Patricia Williams's consultation room felt like a small library, neat brown shelves, warm lamplight, soft teal velvet chairs. Nothing clinical or stern, just a safe room where a child could breathe. Ronan perched on a chair, eyes fixed on the patterned rug, both hands crushing the wrinkled sticker page. Eleliana sat close, nodding encouragement. Oliver stood by the window, hands in his pockets, trying to hide the sweat in his palms. A CEO who'd signed deal after million-dollar deal found himself rattled. Dr. Williams, silver hair, pulled back eyes, kind, but steady, smiled at Ronan. Hi, Ronan. I hear you're very good at seeing the world your own way. Ronan hesitated. I just see letters that keep dancing. Then today, we'll help them stay still. She set a page of print in front of him and handed him a blue overlay. Try this. Ronan laid it down with shaking fingers. The room held its breath. He read a short passage aloud, slow but clear without stumbles. When he finished, his eyes shone. They didn't dance. Eleliana pressed a hand to her heart, tears breaking free. Oliver turned his face aside, eyes burning. Dr. Williams nodded and jotted notes. She brought out a set of 3D blocks. Now let's sort these by pattern. Ronan arranged the pieces quickly, spotting a tricky rule that made even adults blink. He explained, if you rotate this way, 3 triangles make a 6-pointed star. Dr. Williams looked up at Oliver, voice calm and firm. "Mr. Lawson, your son is not deficient. In fact, he's twice exceptional. He has dyslexia and superior strengths in spatial reasoning and systems thinking. With the right supports, Ronan can grow into a creator, a leader, even a genius in a field that needs imagination." Oliver froze. The months of strain cracked apart. He crossed the room, knelt before his son, and took those small shoulders in both hands. His voice shook, but each word landed like a vow. "Listen to me, Ronan. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're brilliant in your own way. And I am proud of you." Tears streamed down Ronan's face as he fell into his father's arms. "Really, Dad, I don't have to be like everyone else for you to keep me, no son. You only have to be you." Eleliana watched with a hand over her mouth, shoulders trembling. In that instant, the little room filled with light, a child finally feeling enough, a father finally laying down his pride, and a woman certain that her mother's legacy still lived on. Part 8. The Truth Unveiled. That night, the Lawson kitchen felt as warm as a family diner hidden inside a glittering city. Soft gold pendant lights washed the marble, the kettle hissed and clicked, and the air held the faint perfume of melted butter and lemon. On the island, Eleliana opened a children's science magazine and set a thin blue reading film beside it, light as a veil of water. Ronan climbed onto a high stool, hair mussed clutching to his chest, the wrinkled sticker page with the red heart. Oliver stood across from him, white shirt sleeves rolled his Patek catching the light. His phone buzzed twice. He shut the ringer off and placed it face down as if closing the door on the world outside. "Want to read for Dad?" Eleliana said, gently sliding the blue film toward Ronan. He nodded and drew a steady breath. The film glided over the page like laying down a sky. He held the corner's eyes wide, and then the small miracle letters that used to leap and scatter stood to attention in neat rows like soldiers waiting for orders. DOLPHINS. Communicate with echolocation. Ronan sounded it out, then flowed into smooth reading. His voice didn't snag. It held a clear rhythm and a quiet spark of excitement. At the end of the paragraph, he looked up. "I can read it, Dad." His blue eyes shone so bright they seemed to catch reflections from the marble. Oliver braced a hand on the counter, throat dry. "Son." It was all he managed. His lashes trembled, the one thing in a life of control he couldn't control. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in the doorway with a basket of fruit, stunned. The young cook froze with a towel in her hand. No one dared break the moment the first time a 10-year-old boy heard his own voice speak words he fully understood. Eleliana turned the magazine so everyone could see, then faced Oliver. Her tone was warm but clear, as if closing a case years in contention. "Ronan has dyslexia, but he's exceptionally bright. His brain uses color rhythm and space to process language. When we give him the right keys, this overlay, a breathing rhythm, something to touch words hold still. His intelligence has always been there. We just hadn't opened the right door." Ronan paused, then turned to Oliver, his voice trembling into a small plea. "So, I'm not broken, am I, Dad?" Oliver stepped around the island and knelt to meet his eyes. He cupped the back of his son's neck and drew him in, breathing in butter and lemon, the warm smell of a child's hair, and the faint ink of paper. "No, son, you were never broken. You're different, and your difference makes me proud. A soft breath went through the room. Mrs. Rodriguez set down the fruit and folded her hands. Gracias a Dios, she murmured. Eleliana smiled through her tears. On the island, the blue film lay exactly where it had been thin, resilient, a promise that from now on the letters would listen. The kitchen still carried the sweetness of butter, but the air had changed. The blue film sat on the magazine like living proof no one could deny. Ronan perched on the stool, gripping his red heart sticker page, his gaze bright and unsure. Oliver still knelt, looking at his son, as if truly seeing him for the first time. Eleliana's words echoed in him. Ronan has dyslexia, but he's exceptionally bright. Not an indictment, but a key. Dad, Ronan whispered, careful not to break the spell. Then, all those F's, they weren't because I'm stupid. Oliver swallowed his throat tight. No, they weren't failures. They were signs that I didn't understand how you learn. And I'm sorry, Ronan. I asked you to live like every other kid when you were born with your own set of wings. Ronan's tears slipped free, shoulders shaking. I thought you'd send me away because you were ashamed of me. The words cut like a blade. Oliver wrapped him close and whispered, No, son. I'm ashamed that I didn't believe you sooner. Eleliana stood by, fingertips trembling on the magazine. She drew a breath and spoke more firmly, pinning a stake in the ground. Ronan has dyslexia. That means his brain handles letters differently. It also means he has exceptional strengths: spatial reasoning, creativity, connective thinking. What some teachers call mistakes are the footprints of a rare mind. Oliver lifted his head, eyes wet but lit. So, my son isn't a burden. No, Eleliana said, steady as a vow. He's a treasure. Silence fell again. Tick of the wall clock, Ronan's uneven breath. He searched his father's face for one last guarantee. Oliver nodded slowly and finally said what he should have said long ago. Ronan, you don't have to be like anyone else to be loved by me. You only have to be you. And I swear I won't let anyone call you a failure again. Tears dotted the white shirt, but this time they were tears that set someone free. In this kitchen that had so often held only hush, a truth found its name, and a small heart was saved. The room felt as if it were waiting on another miracle. Ronan's eyes still shimmered, but now they were bright with hope. In his hands, the red heart sticker page was creased, its edge torn from being held too tight. Oliver sat beside him, a steady hand on his shoulder, warmer and stronger than any wall. Quietly, Eleliana set another magazine on the counter, this time, a short, large-print children's story. She slid the blue film toward him. Want to try reading? For everyone. Ronan blinked. Everyone. Oliver nodded and glanced toward the doorway. Rodriguez Maria, come in. The two housekeepers stepped closer. Even the driver, carrying a basket from the garage, hovered in the frame. The big kitchen felt suddenly full. Every eye turned toward the boy, who used to bow his head over blank pages. Ronan swallowed, hands shaking. You can, Oliver whispered, leaning to his ear. I believe. Ronan breathed in, set the blue film over the page, and began. The little dolphin jumped high and splashed the water like rain. His voice wavered, but it was clear. Word by word, steady and sure. By the last line, his cheeks were glowing. He wasn't afraid, because he knew he was different, and that made him strong. The room burst open. Rodriguez dabbed at her eyes, Maria clapped her applause ringing against the marble. Oliver stood and clapped too, his vision blurring. Ronan looked around and for the first time didn't see a single mocking smile, only astonishment and pride. He grinned wide and drew the first real smile in months. Eleliana stepped forward and spoke like a benediction. This is the proof. Dyslexia isn't failure. It's a door to a different way of thinking. Ronan isn't less. He's a talent, a gem cut on its own terms. Oliver nodded hard and set a hand to his chest. My son is living proof, and from this day on, anyone who calls him stupid answers to me. In that instant, the once cold kitchen became a small stage, and Ronan the boy, who used to flee from letters, stood in warm light with a heart that finally knew its worth. Applause still echoed off the marble. Ronan sat again, flushed and happy. The blue film shimmered on the page like a newly found treasure. Oliver straightened. He loosened his tie, unfastened his top button, shrugging out of a CEO's shell. He swept his eyes over the faces of the people who had served this house for years. Rodriguez Maria, the driver, the young cook, wiping tears. Listen, he said, voice resonant, rough with feeling. My son Ronan is not deficient. He has dyslexia. That means he learns differently, not that he's stupid or weak. On the contrary, he's extraordinarily bright, and I won't let anyone belittle him again. His hand rested on Ronan's shoulder, firm and proud. I used to miss this. I saw grades and called them failure. Tonight I swear, in front of all of you in this house, no one will look at Ronan with pity or disdain. He is my son. He deserves respect. A beat of stillness. Then Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd been with the family since the day Ronan was born, nodded through tears. Sir, he's always been special. We were just waiting for you to see it. Maria stepped forward and squeezed Ronan's hand. We're here, always cheering for you. Ronan turned to his father, eyes wide, his mouth trembling. Dad, you said that in front of everyone. That you're proud of me. Oliver bent until his forehead touched his son's seal, pressed in the oldest way. Yes, and I'm going to say it again and again, loud enough for the whole world. Eleliana stepped back, her heart aching in the best way. This wasn't just a rich family's kitchen anymore. It was a place where truth had been spoken aloud, and where a boy finally felt like pride, not burden. That evening, the long dining table glowed under the crystal chandelier. No cold silences, no lonely clatter of cutlery. Just the scent of hot lasagna, sparkling lemonade, and a lively hum of voices. Ronan sat in the center, with a children's book open and the blue film ready. Eleliana nodded toward him. Want to read a little before we eat a toast too today? He drew a breath. Every gaze was on him, not to catch a mistake, but to cheer him on. He laid down the film and followed the lines. The stars were shining above the ocean, and the little dolphin knew he was not broken, only different. His voice carried even and sure. When he finished, the whole table applauded. Oliver lifted his glass and stood, his baritone filling the room. This isn't just dinner. It's a beginning. From now on, my son will not have to hide his difference. Let's raise a glass to Ronan, to the truth revealed tonight, and to a mind that shines in its own way. Ronan blushed, but his smile was radiant. He whispered, I never thought I'd see this day. Oliver leaned down and answered at once, and I've never been prouder than I am tonight. Eleliana raised her glass voice, thick, to a brave boy and to a father who chose love over a contract. Rodriguez and Maria lifted theirs, crystal chiming like a promise. A kitchen and dining room, once heavy with pressure, had become a celebration. And in the light and laughter and the final sentences spoken from a 10-year-old's steady voice, everyone knew this wasn't just a meal. It was a beginning where truth stepped into the light and hearts began to heal. Part 9. UCLA's Certificate. That morning, Dr. Patricia Williams's office felt like a small sanctuary of knowledge. Los Angeles sunlight poured through the window, slid across neatly lined shelves, and pooled on the brain model set at the center of the table. On the walls hung small frames, children laughing wide, a few certificates glinting with gold seals. The room smelled of new paper and warm oak, like the overture to a gentle song. Oliver sat upright on a deep blue velvet chair, gray suit fitted over his broad shoulders. But his hands, the ones that had signed dozens of seven-figure deals, were clenched so tight the veins stood out. Eleliana picked a spot just behind Ronan, so he could turn and find her reassuring smile. And Ronan, white shirt, soft tousled hair, held a wrinkled silver star sticker in his palm, a little talisman that had followed him through a long storm. Dr. Williams entered with a blue file labeled Ronan Lawson Comprehensive Evaluation. She set it down, took the seat across from them, eyes kind and bright. "Ready, Ronan?" she asked, voice warm as a quilt. He swallowed and nodded. Oliver leaned forward, the CEO awaiting the most important ruling of his life. She opened the file. The first page read in bold, diagnostic summary. She read slowly each word, landing exactly where it belonged. Ronan demonstrates superior spatial reasoning, exceptional systems thinking, and very high pattern recognition relative to age. He also presents specific reading difficulties, dyslexia, with a marked discrepancy between intellectual potential and conventional reading to writing performance. Oliver exhaled like a latch had finally lifted. Eleliana's fingers pressed the chairback, eyes shining. Ronan looked up, hope and confusion braided in his gaze. Dr. Williams turned the page. Cognitive profile was underlined in red. On standardized measures, Ronan falls in the 97th, 98th percentile for visual spatial reasoning, well above average. She paused and looked straight at the boy. "What does that mean, Ronan?" "It means your brain was born to build bridges between things other people think are unrelated." Oliver let out a strangled laugh and bowed his head. He covered his mouth, afraid his feelings might rush out all at once. On the table, sun touched the page's edge, turning the bold type into gold thread. From a drawer, Dr. Williams took an embossing seal. Slowly, she pressed it to the last page. Gold seal, rising crisp and round. Professionally, she said, steady and warm, "I am certifying Ronan as twice exceptional, both gifted and with a specific learning difference. This isn't a permission slip. It's a map, so school and family can travel the right road." Ronan's eyes went round. "I'm twice twice exceptional." She smiled, sounding it out with him. "Exceptional in two ways. Once for intellect, once for the path your brain chooses on its own." The room seemed to widen enough for one clean breath. Oliver turned to his son, voice husky as wind across a string. "Do you hear that, Ronan? Not just special. Twice." Dr. Williams slid the file toward the boy. "One more little ritual," she said, pulling a small box of stickers from the drawer. "We usually let the child place the star on their own certificate. But today, She spotted the silver star in Ronan's fist and chuckled softly. "Let's use the one that got you through the storm." Ronan peeled the sticker with trembling fingers and leaned close. He set the silver star at the edge of the gold seal, silver touching gold, a tiny lightning flash. He whispered, as if not to break the spell, "I'm really recognized." "More than recognized," Dr. Williams said, resting her hand on the page with a small nod. "You've been called by your right name." Outside, wind moved through the red maples. Inside, three hearts slipped into a shared rhythm. And in the center of the room, a sheet stamped with gold and crowned with a silver star lay there, not a verdict, but a passport to the journey just opening. The report sat in the middle of the table like a small star newly landed. Dr. Williams pulled her chair in, lifting a thin stack of color-tabbed pages. "Validation is just the first step," she said. "Equal parts, science and gentleness. This is Ronan's map." She pointed line by line. First, multisensory color, rhythm touch. Blue overlay highlighters raise text. Second, alternative pathways to show knowledge, verbal responses, 3D model projects instead of long essays. Third, reduce visual noise. Fewer words on a page, generous white space chunked reading. Fourth, extended time and short breath breaks. Fifth, assistive tech keyboarding spell check audiobooks. Sixth, a mentor who speaks the language of Ronan's brain. Ronan listened, eyes tracking, as if he were studying blueprints for a secret park. I can do projects instead of essays for real, not instead of," she corrected with a smile. "So your intelligence can show up in its own language." Oliver leaned forward. "So if we bring this map into the classroom, my son will fly," Dr. Williams finished simply. "Because we've cleared the obstacles off his runway." Sweat gathered in Liliana's palms as she held the chair. Her eyes met Oliver's, two adults, understanding each other. Without a word, the axis had shifted. Oliver thought suddenly of the company's early days risk maps spread over a table, and how he'd survived by seeing patterns where others saw chaos. He turned to Ronan and smiled. "Turns out we share the same motif. You and I both read the world as systems." Dr. Williams slid over a parent advocacy letter with a signature line. "Mr. Lawson, this is a formal request for accommodations to the school. Once this leaves my office, Ronan has the right to use color, overlays receive extra time, and submit project-based work. No one gets to call that special treatment." Oliver took from his pocket the fountain pen that had followed him through deal after deal. The nib touched paper. A strong blue line flowed smooth. He paused, lifted his gaze to his son. "From today on," he said softly, "this pen signs only what protects you." He finished and set the pen down, his warm hand pressing the corner so the ink could set. Ronan watched the stroke lips moving. "Dad, did you just sign a new contract?" "I did," Oliver said with a rough smile. "The longest contract of my life, the contract to stand beside you." Liliana turned away, but tears had already fallen. Dr. Williams closed the file, laying her hand over the letter like a witness. Outside, a maple leaf skimmed the glass, almost too soft to hear, yet enough to tell all three that a small planet in their family's orbit had changed its path. Dr. Williams rose, opened a low cabinet, and brought out a sea blue tote. Inside was a flight kit for a different kind of brain, a set of colored overlays, highlighters, textured flashcards, and a thick covered notebook embossed, "Say it, see it, touch it." She set the tote in front of Ronan. "This is yours." Not props to hide a weakness, but wings for the way you're meant to lift. Ronan touched each item like treasure, his eyes first, uncertain, then quietly bright. I can bring these to class. Not just can Dr. Williams smiled. You have the right. The letter your dad signed is your ticket. Oliver gently squeezed his son's shoulder. You'll walk into class as yourself, not as anybody else. His voice caught low and warm like a vow. Dr. Williams slid the certificate with the gold seal toward Ronan, setting beside it a soft tip marker and a textured name card with raised letters RONAN. Now the final rite, she said. Sign your name. Signing is how you tell the world I'm here. And I don't ask permission to be different. Ronan glanced quickly at Oliver, then at Liliana, and drew a breath. He laid the blue film over the corner, traced the raised RONAN with his other hand. Say it, see it, touch it. The marker tip met the page, trembling through the first stroke. The R leaned, the O wobbled, the N swayed, the A hesitated, the last N pressed a shade too dark. Imperfect as a heartbeat, and just as complete. As the ink soaked into the fibers, the room went very still. Oliver lifted his hand, not to fix anything, but to kiss the tiny ink dot that had smudged at the tail of the N. This, he whispered, is the most beautiful signature I've ever seen. Ronan blinked, damp lashes quivering. I did it, didn't I? You just signed your way into your own world, Liliana said, palm pressed to her chest as if to hold her heart in place. And we were here to witness it. Dr. Williams picked up an instant camera. Look here, three of you. Oliver drew his chair close and wrapped an arm around Ronan. Liliana stood behind her hand on the boy's back. Click. The image slowly bloomed, a child clutching blue wings, a father bent to meet him, a woman smiling through tears, and between them, a gold seal and a silver star. Oliver took the photo as the colors settled, studying it, the way he once studied new acquisitions, not in profit, but in pulse. He opened his wallet, slid out the sleek metal card, hesitated, then tucked the card away and placed the photo in the place of honor. From today on, he murmured, the most important thing I carry is us. A draft teased the curtains. A leaf skimmed the glass. Not autumn's goodbye, but a birth announcement. Ronan hugged the blue wing's eyes fixed on his wobbly signature. For the first time, he saw his name hold still. And behind that name stood a broad-shouldered Oliver Lawson, a father granting his son the right to be different, signing a lifetime pledge with his own heart. Dr. Williams closed the file and glanced at the clock. If you'd like, we can call Westfield right now. When the voice of science stands beside the voice of a parent, doors tend to open faster. Oliver nodded. The CEO in him returned not to close a deal, but to protect a child. He set the phone to speaker. Hold music, then a clipped secretary's voice, and finally Principal Carson with Mrs. Henderson on the line. Mr. Lawson, the principal, began polite guarded. Oliver was calm. Dr. Patricia Williams is here. She's just signed a comprehensive evaluation for my son. I'd like us to speak as adults, standing around a child, not around a grade. Dr. Williams opened concise and warm. I confirm that Ronan is twice exceptional. He has a specific reading difference with very high pattern recognition and spatial reasoning. I recommend immediate supports, color overlay, reduced visual noise, the option of verbal or project-based demonstrations, and extended time. The line went quiet for a beat. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. I never wish to cause harm, but the classroom must be fair to everyone. Eleliana leaned in slightly, whispering courage toward Oliver. Let Ronan say one thing. Oliver nodded and moved the phone closer. Son, would you like to tell your teacher what you read last night? Ronan swallowed. The blue film trembled in his hand. He placed it over the folder, opened the notebook Dr. Williams had given him, and read, voice shaky at first, then steadying. I'm not broken. I learn differently. When the words stand still, I can show you my mind. Silence filled the call, only the breathing of 3 people in the room. Then Mrs. Henderson spoke without the lesson plan voice for the first time. Ronan, I hear you very clearly. I am sorry I thought the overlay was cheating. Principal Carson followed changed. We'll provisionally approve support starting tomorrow while we schedule a formal meeting for a long-term plan. Dr. Williams, could you email your recommendations today? Right now. Dr. Williams said, keys, tapping like a door unlatching. Oliver leaned back, shoulders loosening. Good. And one more thing. Feedback about Ronan from now on focuses on progress, not just errors. We measure strengths to lift the rest. Understood, the principal replied. Tomorrow, Ronan may use the color overlay in all reading tasks. Will have extended time and a para-educator to help chunk text. The call ended. The room quieted to wind on glass. Ronan turned to Eleliana, eyes wide. Did I just talk like a grown-up? You just talked like yourself, she said, tapping the center of his shirt. Oliver looked at them both, a child holding blue wings, a woman holding the key, and understood that the finest power he would ever wield wasn't on a trading floor, but in how he helped a child be heard. He typed a message to the family group chat. Tomorrow Ronan walks into class with legal wings. We've won the first round. Dusk in Los Angeles poured like red wine over the Lawson Tower's glass. Oliver opened the door to his private office, the room that once belonged only to charts and trophies, to let Ronan and Eleliana in. Late light lay across the shelves, where deal plaques stood like playing cards. Today, a space had been cleared between 2 silver medals. Oliver set the certificate with the gold seal on the desk beside the UCLA Polaroid and Ronan's silver star. He handed his son a new frame. Will you hang this for me? This spot should have been yours all along. Ronan cradled the frame with both hands and rose on his toes. Oliver stood behind him, arms guiding the small wrists as they lifted together. Click. The nail caught the wood. The frame settled. In that moment, the 7-figure numbers slipped to the background. At the center was Ronan Lawson in bold type, glowing soft under the sunset. A hush of feeling, Ronan looked up at his father. Dad, if this hangs here, does that mean everyone who comes in will see it? Yes. And when they ask, I'll say, this is the greatest achievement of my life. The boy bit his lip, eyes wet and radiant. Can I stand here a while, as long as you like? Oliver answered, his hand resting on the boy's shoulder, steady as a harbor. Eleliana stepped back half a pace and watched the 2 of them under the spill of light. The glow rimmed her hair, and Oliver, catching it, went still. He realized she had been the first to name the truth everyone else refused to face. He turned to her. Eleliana, I learned how to run a company, how to stand beside a child. I learned from you. She shook her head with a quiet smile. You learned it from your own heart, Oliver. I just knocked on the door. Evening wind moved the curtains. Papers rustled. Ronan reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled red heart sticker. He ran over, pressed it into a corner of the frame. So I'll remember. You learn best with your heart first. Oliver laughed, voice catching. Better than any management philosophy. He looked to Eleliana, and with a rare honesty for a CEO said, "If one day you want to leave the kitchen for a classroom, I'll fund it fully. Not because we owe you, but because there are other children waiting for someone like you." Tears blurred her eyes. "I'll accept when Ronan truly doesn't need me anymore." "The trouble is," Oliver smiled, "we'll always need people like you." The city lit up beyond the window. Inside, they stood quietly before the new frame, a gold seal, a silver star, and a crooked red heart, 3 emblems of a journey, finally called by its name twice, exceptional. Ronan whispered, as if to himself and to the sky, "My name is standing still." "And from today," Oliver said, hand over his chest, "I promise you don't have to prove anything except living true to your brilliant brain." In that warm hush, a CEO's office turned into a gallery of pride. The door closed softly, and inside, a 10-year-old had been recognized, a father had begun to heal, and a woman had passed on a legacy. Sunset slid along the edge of the frame, leaving a long ribbon of light like a signature, the family's signature, on a wall of true victories. Part 10. A New Future. Pacific Learning Academy in the morning smelled of fresh pine and a soft hint of tempera paint. Santa Monica sunlight poured through the tall panes of glass, sketching bright bands across the wooden floor. On the walls hung multi-sensory learning boards, raised letter frames, tactile phoneme cards, and color films in ocean blue teal and spring green, arranged like a private collection for minds that like to touch the world to understand it. Ronan stepped through the glass door stenciled with welcome, hugging the sea blue wings bag Dr. Williams had given him. He paused. On the blackboard, Ms. Albright had already written in white chalk, "Different is a superpower." Beside it, one empty space still smudged with chalk dust waited for someone's name. Oliver walked behind him, leaving his buzzing phone in his pocket. Today he wasn't the CEO of a corporation, just a father walking into a school where the light knew how to stand on his son's side. Eleliana kept pace on Ronan's right fingers, brushing his bag strap like a reminder. "You already have the key." "Good morning, Ronan," Miss Albright. Smiled hazel eyes, bright behind round glasses. "Would you like to be the first to sign our class promise board?" Ronan swallowed, looking toward the blank space. He opened the bag and pulled out his blue overlay film and the sandpaper letters RONAN. The room 12 kids fell quiet, not from curiosity, but because they were used to everyone having their own way. Ms. Albright handed him a soft-tip marker. He laid the blue film on the board, traced the raised letters with his fingertip, then wrote. The R leaned, the O wobbled, the N swayed, the A stumbled, the last N pressed a little too hard. But when he stepped back, the name Ronan stood steady, breathing with the light. Ms. Albright didn't correct a thing. She lifted her hands and clapped a simple rhythm. The class joined in a brief, rounded burst of applause. "Welcome, Ronan," she said slowly, placing the stress exactly where it belonged, so he could hear the respect in every syllable. "What's your promise?" Ronan looked at the film in his hand and lifted his chin. "I promise." When the words hold still, I'll show everyone how my brain sees the world. Perfect. She nodded. Let's start with the bridge challenge. Your team's got paper straws and wooden clips. Build a bridge that holds 30 marbles. The class scattered. Ronan touched the bundle of straws. His eyes began to shine. If we brace triangles on both sides and arc the middle, the force will spread. He sketched fast, his other hand snapping pieces into place as though he were fitting chips of blue sky together. His teammates Maya and Theo watched, then nodded and followed his directions. Oliver stood outside the glass, afraid to break the rhythm by walking in. A man who had lived by profit graphs suddenly understood there are charts only a heart can read. The arc, where a boy goes from head down to head high. 30 minutes later, they tested. Ronan's team's bridge trembled but held. 28, 29, 30, the class cheered. Ms. Albright jotted a note, professional joy slipping into her voice. Ronan observes force patterns beautifully. Leads with geometric language before written language. That's advanced. Oliver turned his face away and touched the corner of his eye. Eleliana saw and offered one quiet sentence just for him. See, when the words hold still, the system's genius steps forward. The period bell rang crisp as recognition. Ronan looked toward the glass and saw his dad. He gave a thumbs up, not to ask permission, but to confirm I did it. Oliver tapped a fist over his chest. In reply, the signal of two warriors choosing the same side. At Pacific, the morning ended with one name standing solid on the board and one bridge that didn't fall. The future, it turned out, doesn't always roar like fireworks. Sometimes it begins with a clap on the beat in a small classroom where a boy realizes his difference isn't a secret, it's his language. The reading lab felt like an oasis, moss green carpet beanbags that wrapped around your back, and a soft amber glow from Himalayan salt lamps. A diffuser breathed out a hint of bergamot orange. On the wall, wooden pegs carved with students' names waited to hold each child's flight tools. Noise-canceling headphones, squeeze balls, and those colored films in every shade. In the corner, the reader's chair, deep blue velvet, sat on a low riser beside a 2-minute hourglass. 2 minutes for a voice to find its heartbeat. Who wants the reader's chair today? Ms. Albright clapped gently. You can use any of your tools. Hands popped up everywhere. Ronan looked at the chair, and his chest tightened. The memory of being accused of cheating with a blue film flashed past. His hand tightened on his strap. Ronan, Miss Albright called softly, not pulling, just inviting. From the next table, Maya tilted her yellow film toward him. You use blue. I use yellow. Everyone here has their color. Theo lifted his headphones. I wear these when I read. Nobody laughs. Ronan drew a breath and brushed the sandpaper letters RONAN. He walked up, set the blue film on a short story he'd written that morning during Free Write, the Dolphin Who Counted Bridges. The hourglass flipped. The room settled not for a test, but for a write. The little dolphin learned to count waves by watching bridges, triangles on the sides, and arch in the middle. When the words stood still, the numbers stopped fighting and became friends. His voice shook at first, then rounded out, finding a rhythm. He reached the last line. He wasn't broken. He was an ocean with his own map. No one clapped right away. There was a gold-colored hush the kind of quiet where respect makes sound unnecessary. Ms. Albright stepped up, pressed a brave reader sticker on the edge of his page, and nodded as if signing a covenant. You just taught the class a language, the language of patterns. Beyond the glass, Oliver went still. He saw the child, who had once kept his head down, now reading from a riser to a semicircle of faces, not judging, just listening. His phone buzzed, an investment fund calling. He silenced it. No deal mattered more than these 2 minutes. Ms. Albright led Ronan to the peg wall. We're missing a name. She pulled out a wood-burning stylus and slowly pressed RONAN, appeared warm and dark. She hung his blue film there. From now on, your tool has an address in this room. Ronan touched his name like tapping a warm river stone. Ms. My name holds still here too. It does, she smiled. And every time you walk in, it will say hello first. Maya slapped his palm in a friendly pop. Theo tugged him back to a beanbag. My turn to read. Will you help me mark keywords? Ronan nodded, eyes bright. For the first time, he wasn't the one needing help. He was the one asked for help. Outside the glass, Oliver snapped a photo blue film hanging by a carved name. He sent it to Aleliana with a single line, Our boy doesn't carry wings anymore. He has a place to hang them. Across town, Aleliana opened the picture and leaned her forehead to the window. The skyline blurred until only one truth stayed clear. The future had chosen Ronan because Ronan dared to choose himself. At the end of the day, Pacific sent a blue parent folder home. Ronan held it close like a little music box that could sing. Oliver took it from him, and they sat together on a wooden bench beneath a eucalyptus tree. Salt wind from the ocean ruffled the pages. He opened the folder. Page 1 was a bold header, Student Ronan Lawson Week 2. Below Ms. Albright's handwriting round, even in sky blue ink, Ronan analyzes force through bridge models with excellence. Leads his group using geometric diagrams before text. When using blue film and chunking the passage, reading is smooth. Oral responses show systems thinking beyond grade level. Growth suggestion allow 3D products Bosch video explanations in place of long written essays. Clipped to it was a photo Ronan leaning in, guiding Maya's triangle joints. Behind them, the straw bridge holding under 30 marbles. In the corner, a handwritten note. Leadership looks like listening first. Ronan looked up hesitant. Did I really do it, Dad? Oliver didn't answer right away. He set the page on his knee, bent forward, and hugged his son. The smells of sun, new paper, and a child's hair pushed every meeting and deadline over the horizon. You're doing exactly what I've dreamed you would, showing the world how beautiful your brain is. From a corner of the yard, a wind chime stirred. Ronan pulled another slip from the folder, the class star shout-out. Today, they'd voted Ronan for making numbers our friends. 4 wobbly kid signatures crowded the margin. He found the first one, Maya, and smiled a smile no longer cautious. They gave me another star. Oliver stood. Come on, let's swing by the office. What for? To hang your star in a spot that's still empty. The Tesla slipped down the boulevard toward Beverly Hills. Oliver's phone buzzed non-stop emails. Texts a call from Henderson Capital flagged urgent. He glanced once, then muted it. His hand rested over Ronan's wrist, holding the tempo of a chorus son, first world later. In the elevator, Oliver reopened the progress note. He snapped a photo and sent it to Aleliana. The teacher says he leads with geometry. A few seconds later, I say he leads with his heart. The glass doors of the office swung open, cool walnut and leather scent. The wall of achievements was still there, trophies, plaques, framed articles. In the center, the gold seal certificate and the silver star already hung. Oliver set Pacific's folder on the desk and looked at the open space to the right, cleared yesterday. Ready? Ronan nodded. He smoothed the page edge and carefully set the progress note into a glass frame. When the frame clicked softly against the wall, Oliver felt the slope of his life's graph change. Some metrics never hit the market, but they raise the profit of the soul. It's beautiful, Ronan whispered. My words. Stay still here too, and whenever I'm tired, Oliver laid a hand on the frame. I'll read these lines, and remember the most important thing I ever signed was your right to be different. In the window's reflection, the city shimmered like a sea of lights. Inside Pacific's first report sat beneath the gold seal, two pieces locking together like an arch, and its supports. The future added one more quiet beat, soft enough to hear growth happening. A week later, Pacific hosted a mini project exhibition. The second floor hall turned into a little street of ideas, white linen tables, warm string lights like falling stars, nameplates embossed in raised letters. In the center, Ronan's booth featured an arch bridge model in balsa wood. Its base was a pod of clay dolphins carrying the span his way of connecting the reading about dolphins with force distribution in math. Beside it, a tiny hand-crank projector threw a triangle shadow that chased the arch across a fabric wall like a visible heartbeat. Oliver arrived early midnight. Blue suit, plum red tie, but empty-handed. No laptop. No assistant, only a silk pocket square. He suspected he might need it. Aleliana walked with him in a simple black dress, hair in a neat bun. They stopped at Ronan's booth, just as the chime for presentations sounded. Ronan aligned his blue film over his note cards and glanced at Ms. Albright. She nodded, begin. He lifted his head, voice clear. I'm Ronan. My bridge uses an arch to spread the load. I chose dolphins because when I read, I saw a pattern waves arch breath. When the words hold still, I can see force the way I see water. He placed the 30 marbles one by one. The arch quivered, then went still. The hall held its breath. Ronan turned the mini projector. The triangle shadow slid over the arch and brushed two bright shapes on his cheeks like wings. A younger student at the next booth breathed out, "It's beautiful." The word wasn't for technique alone. It was for a mind blooming in public. Ms. Albright wrote on her board, "Applied systems thinking exceeds grade level." A parent came up to shake Oliver's hand. "I heard your son's story from Ms. Albright. You're brave. My child needs color film too. Thank you for going first." Oliver shook his head, eyes never leaving his son. "I didn't go first. My kid led me." Ronan lifted the last marble off and smiled at his dad. "I want to try 35. "You sure?" Oliver asked, eyes bright like deal closing days, but his voice was the kind you use when you're standing beside someone. "Sure. Marble 31, 32, 33. The arch swayed hard. Silence again. Ronan set number 34 and paused, then slid a tiny brace under the arch's foot. "I see the fracture line," he whispered. "I'm going to support it." Marble 35 went on. The bridge held. Applause rolled out, thick, warm wave after wave. Oliver touched the silk to his eyes, and murmured to Eleliana, "Did you hear that he just redefined risk management better than any slide I've ever shown?" Eleliana smiled through tears, because he hears the language of breaking before things break. Afterward, Ms. Albright pressed a design thinking badge on Ronan's name card and handed him her feedback sheet. Ronan translates complexity into touchable shapes. Leadership guides peers by seeing ahead. Oliver held the sheet like a stock certificate, but the metric had changed. This was return on love. He bent to Ronan's height and whispered, "Tonight, I'm hanging this on the wall, right next to the gold seal. And if anyone asks, I'll give the same answer every time. This is the most beautiful deal I've ever made." Under the string lights, Ronan hugged his bridge model. He didn't know where the future would carry him, engineer, filmmaker, or a builder of invisible bridges between people. But he knew where it started with one steady word, an arch that didn't collapse, and a father willing to cry when his son spoke the language of light. Night slipped over Beverly Hills like a thin black veil. Oliver's glass-walled office glowed honey gold. On the walnut wall, a new gallery had taken shape, the gold seal with its silver star, the UCLA Polaroid, Week 2 progress note, the design thinking sheet from the exhibition, and one empty spot with a waiting nail, ready for one more proof of growing up. Oliver set the new feedback on the desk, opened a frame, slid the paper in, and wiped the glass with a silk square. "You picked the spot," he said, crouching to meet Ronan's eyes. The boy pointed just below the gold seal. "Here, so when you look up, you can see a whole bridge." "Done." Oliver hung it. Click. A small sound that rang long in both their chests. On the wall, the papers formed a perfect arch base stones, labeled "Brave Reader." The middle span, progress note. The keystone, the gold seal with its silver star. Eleliana stood quietly in the doorway, holding a white envelope. "This came earlier," she said softly. "I think it belongs on this wall." Oliver took the envelope and saw the red stamp USC Rossier School of Education. He looked up and met her eyes. "Open it." She slid out the letter and read straight through, lips trembling. "Congratulations, Eleliana Fry. You have been admitted to the Master of Education program, specialization in learning differences support, with a partial scholarship. Sincerely, the admissions committee." She folded the letter, eyes bright with tears. "I didn't expect." Oliver smiled, pulled a card from a drawer, and set it on the desk, embossed, "Donna Fry Fellowship, a Lawson Family Foundation Scholarship." Her mother's name shimmered in gold. The rest, "So Donna Fry keeps teaching kids like Ronan." She covered her mouth. Tears slipped through her fingers. "Oliver." He shook his head and stepped closer, voice low and warm. "Not charity, long-term strategy of the heart." He turned to Ronan. "See, every bridge needs a name. This one is Grandma Donna's." Ronan ran into her arms, head against her chest. "Will you be Dr. Eleliana?" She laughed through tears. "If you keep doing your homework, maybe." Oliver hung the acceptance letter beside the UCLA Polaroid. The wall brightened, not with a light bulb, but with a future that knew how to feed itself. He stepped back, one hand on each of their shoulders. "Starting tomorrow, I'm traveling less. Half my meetings move here after Ronan's school hours. This wall is my new calendar." His phone buzzed again and again in his pocket. He switched on "Do Not Disturb" and set the phone face down, glass to the desk. "Tonight we celebrate with my Italian al dente but not burned. All three laughed. Outside, the city lights floated like a second sky between buildings. Inside, the achievements wall told a story that needed no narrator. A child was seen. A father learned to love with his time. A woman found wind in her sails to become a lighthouse. Ronan stepped back and looked up at the paper arch he'd built from his own life. He took his father's hand, then Eleliana's, closing the link. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'm trying 40 marbles." Oliver raised an eyebrow. Teasing, "Then I'll try 40 minutes without checking email." Eleliana touched the letter, bearing her mother's name, and smiled. "And I will try 40 pages of coursework." They stood there, 3 people, 3 promises beneath a wall made of paper and trust. Outside, night wind swept the olive trees. Inside, the future held still, not because it stopped moving, but because at last it had a map. The night was quiet as a lake. At the small desk by the window, Ronan spread a sheet of thick cream paper, set the blue film on the corner, ran a finger over the sandpaper letters RONAN, and picked up his pen. He wrote the opening line slightly slow, slightly shaky, but steady like breath. "To the one who taught me that different doesn't mean broken." The room smelled of fresh marker and a hint of orange. Beside him, the balsa wood arch lay still, like a promise already kept. Eleliana stood behind him with a hand over her heart, watching each slanted, achingly beautiful word take its place. Oliver leaned against the doorframe, saying nothing. A man who had signed multi-million-dollar deals, now breathing softly so the words wouldn't run. Ronan kept writing each sentence a rung on a ladder. "I used to think I was broken until you gave me a blue film, a way to touch the words, and a map for my brain. I don't have to be like anyone else to be smart. I just need to be seen the right way." He paused. At the bottom, he added small but clear, "Different doesn't mean broken." Eleliana took the page, eyes wet and shining. She read the last line aloud, her voice catching on different. A tear landed in the white space below, didn't smear, only glittered. Oliver stepped forward and set a frame on the desk. "The first work of author Ronan Lawson," he said, voice rough. "Where should we hang it?" Son Ronan thought for a beat and pointed. "Right under the gold seal and the silver star. So when people ask, 'Where's your A?' I can point here and say, 'This is my A,' accepting myself." Oliver smiled the smile of a CEO who had learned the formula for return on love. He hung it. Click. A small latch with the long tail of a symphony. The 3 of them stood together, looking at the new achievement wallpapers, photos, stars, and one handwritten sentence, the kind of assets that never go out of season. Eleliana turned to Ronan. "You know this line will rescue other kids I haven't met yet." Ronan nodded, solemn as a keeper of ocean secrets. "Promise me you won't stay in the kitchen anymore. You have to be in a classroom." Oliver added, warm and steady, "I've set up the Donna Fry Fund. Starting tomorrow, more bridges will rise out of balsa wood, out of light, and out of belief." Night wind slipped through the curtains, pulling in the long breath of the city. In this room, the future stood still, not because motion had stopped, but because the map was finally right. A child recognized a father, learning to love with time, and a woman carrying forward a legacy of light. Next week, Ronan will take his bridge to 40 marbles. The week after, Eleliana officially begins her master's program. And on some evening not far off, Oliver will stand on a gala stage not to persuade investors, but to tell the story of a boy who made the words hold still. If you want to meet them at the next chapter, tell us in the comments, where should Ronan's bridge lead? If you believe every child carries a special flame, drop AI. Please share this video so more parents realize their children aren't lazy. They just need to be taught the way they learn. And tell us which moment touched your heart the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. And if you'd like, leave a message for Ronan, for Oliver, for Eleliana, so they'll know that different doesn't mean broken. Different is a way to shine.